All right, I've got 9 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started if everybody can find a seat, committee members. If there aren't any other House members in here, you're welcome to sit at the table. You may not ask questions, but I will let you sit at the table. But we'll go ahead and get started. We got a big agenda. I think everybody has been handed an agenda, all the members. I want to thank everybody for being here. This is a very, very important topic for not only the city of Jackson, but for all of Mississippi. So I do want us to have a very spirited debate and very informative hearing here today. Now, our topic is crime in Jackson, Jackson crime, and really what's going on. Now, people may ask, why are we doing this? And say, well, this is a problem for Mississippi, not just for Jackson, but for the entire state. Now, I live in Corinth, Mississippi, as y'all know. I drive further than any member of the legislature to get here. I'm 4 hours away. So, but Jackson is a part of me, and I'm a part of Jackson. I went to law school here. I worked here. I had my first job as a lawyer just a few blocks away in the old Heritage Building. I am a part of Jackson. My daughter was born here. I have for the past 12 years been a member of this body, and of those 12 years, as you know, 3 months out of the year I'm here. So over 3 years of my life, I've been down here as a member of this body. My youngest son is 9 years old, so that's 1/3 of his life I've spent right here. So Jackson is near and dear to my heart. Jackson is my second home. So what happens here in this city is important to me, and it's going to be important to this committee. So with that said, we began having discussions back in July about having a hearing on Jackson crime. I got with the lady from Hinds, Miss Yates, about getting this set up, and she began getting speakers and organizing today's agenda. And I do think she's done a marvelous job of getting people here and getting the proper stakeholders here to testify. Everybody that is on the agenda was confirmed to be here as late as Friday of last week. Yesterday, at 12 o'clock, Mayor Lumumba, who was supposed to be here to speak first, informed us that he was not going to be here, and informed us that he had some sickness and was unable to be here. I understand that. Later that day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the mayor and the police chief sent an email stating, unfortunately, the mayor and Chief Davis will be unable to attend the hearing. Please keep us posted as to future events. So both of them told us that they were not going to be here. Neither correspondence was any representative offered in their replacement to provide any of the information that we're asking for. They did not offer us a representative on their behalf to come and talk to us, and as such, we don't know where the city of Jackson, the mayor, or the police department, what their position is on crime in Jackson. It is imperative, and it is going to be noted today, that the state of Mississippi stands willing and ready to help the city of Jackson, but have not partake in this hearing and have been obstinate in their attendance here today. So with that said, we are going to issue a subpoena to both of them. We're placing both the mayor of Jackson under subpoena, and we will place the chief of police under subpoena to be back here on November the 17th to offer testimony in front of this committee as to their plan for Jackson and the crime that is sweeping this city. Again, that will be November 17th, 9 o'clock in this room. We have given both of them ample opportunity to be here, to have a replacement here to testify. I want it to be noted that we are willing and ready and able to help the city of Jackson, and that's why we're taking the steps that we are, placing them under subpoena to be here on November the 17th. With that said, we are going to move ahead in the agenda. Both of those were to be our first two speakers, so we're going to skip and go to the Sheriff of Hinds County, Tyree Jones. Sheriff, you're here, and I'm going to go ahead and you can speak where you're at. That's fine, and just offer your testimony. You are recognized, sir. Thank you for being here.
Right here.
There we go. Yes, sir. Thank you. Before I get started, I just want to recognize that a member from the city did just walk in, and I'm not exactly sure if Mr. Wright is here to speak on behalf of this, but I just want to let you know that he has, walked in. So I'm not sure if you want to yield back to him or you want me to go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, thank you all for this opportunity to be here. And again, I always look forward to working collectively with everybody as it relates to not only crime in Hinds County, but crime in the city of Jackson as well. So as the Sheriff of Hinds County, as you all know, I have a huge responsibility. It's not just the city of Jackson, but it's Hinds County as a whole. And we're talking about the rural and unincorporated areas of Hinds County as well, where we have primary responsibility. But as it relates to specifically the city of Jackson and crime in the city of Jackson, I think that we all know that there is a dark cloud over what I would consider some of the criminal activity and criminal element in the city of Jackson, which has victimized several people over the last few years. And as the Sheriff of Hinds County, I have dedicated resources specifically for the city of Jackson to work collaboratively with other agencies to be able to target and address some of the criminal activity and criminal elements as well. But as you all know, we can't do it alone. The Sheriff's Office can't do it alone. We have to work with other agencies, not only the Jackson Police Department, but we welcome all partners to help us address crime in the city of Jackson and Hinds County. And when I say other partners, I mean other local partners, state partners, and federal partners as well, because we have to depend on others for resources and other tools that we need to move forward with the criminal activity in the city of Jackson. I think that the main issue that we've been facing in the city of Jackson is the homicide rate. The violent crimes have nearly doubled or more over the last few years. And what I've known and what I've recognized about some of that is a lot of negligence on behalf of individuals that have some type of issue with each other. And when I say that there is a lack of conflict resolution, there's a lack of de-escalation. And as a result, many people have been victimized and people have lost their lives as a result of this. Some of them being targets and some of them not necessarily being targets or based on affiliation with some of these individuals as well that may have been actively involved in other criminal activity. And another thing that's very important is we have to address the situation regarding our youth. There has been an uprise in youth criminal activity and youth violence. If you go down to the Henley Young Youth Detention Center right now, I have about 34, 35 juveniles that are there that are charged as adults. And about probably 80 to 90% of that 34 to 35 individuals are charged with some type of murder or some type of violent crime. Some of them are charged with more than one murder. And there has been a significant uptick regarding youth and violent crimes, not only youth being suspected of violent crimes, but youth being victims of violent crimes as well. And when I refer to youth, I'm talking about people that are 18 years or younger, meaning, they are still considered juveniles. So that has been an issue that I have been able to recognize. Another thing that we have also noticed is when these individuals that have been involved in some of the violence and some of the violent crimes, when they see each other, they don't necessarily they don't necessarily care where they are at any particular time. is if I see you in this particular area, if I see you at this red light and we have some type of issue, they're being very negligent and they produce guns, and as you all know, shots are fired and people are injured and or people are killed. And that's very concerning. I did 20 years with the Jackson Police Department, and about 15 of my years with the police department, I worked specifically in the violent crime division. So I'm very familiar with violent crimes, the rate of violent crimes, investigating violent crimes, and knowing exactly what some of these this criminal activity stems from. You know, we talk about gangs, we talk about gang activity and some things of that nature. You know, it's not always gang activity or gang related. You know, some of the things that I realized when I was with the Jackson Police Department, when we spoke specifically about gangs, we noticed at one time that rival gangs were coming together and going out and committing violent crimes, victimizing people, robbing people, and these were rival gangs coming together. So you can't always say that it's gang activity or gangs involved, but we just have negligent people in our community that have not been held accountable for some of the criminal activity they've been involved in. And another thing that we cannot ignore the fact that I think is very important is the lack of police officers, boots on the ground right now. You know, and it's not just here in Hinds County, it's not just in the city of Jackson, it's not in the state of Mississippi, it's nationwide. There has been a shortage of law enforcement personnel. It's just not a very desirable career. The criminal justice system has been bagged up. Some of these individuals have not been held accountable, that have been arrested and have been charged in a timely manner, or they have not been held accountable at all. So when you send that signal out to the people in the community and even the criminals that are creating havoc and being involved in some of these crimes, they feel that they can get away with it because nobody is being held accountable. You don't have enough police officers. You don't always have enough investigators, whereas in the past you did have enough police officers at one time, or you had enough investigators to investigate these crimes and hold them accountable. Another thing that's very important is the backlog of cases that we face, especially here in Hinds County. If you go down to the Raymond Detention Center and to the work center right now that I'm responsible for, you have about 800 individuals that are in jail that are pretrial detainees, meaning they are waiting to go to trial. They have been charged with the crime, they're in jail, and they have not gone before a judge for a trial or some type of plea in all of this time. And I think about people that have been down there 5 or 6 years that are in jail or waiting to go to trial. So, you know, all of these elements play a factor and play a role when we talk about violent crimes in the city of Jackson and some of the people that are involved. It's a lack of accountability sometimes. And I welcome, as the sheriff of Hinds County, all resources that are available to help us address the violent crime issue in the city of Jackson and in Hinds County. We need the help. We have to have partnerships and we have to have partners to be able to address the issues that we're facing here in the city of Jackson and Hinds County as well. And when I talk about that, I talk about other law enforcement agencies. I want to work with everybody to make sure that we're all communicating effectively and adjacently across the board to be able to address these issues. Without effective communication with other law enforcement agencies, without sharing information, without platforms like we have right now, we will find ourselves ineffective, and we will show the community that there is no plan, or there is no there is nothing we're doing or we should be doing it's our responsibility to address these issues. So I welcome any type of platform, and I welcome any type of help and communication that we can get to be able to address these issues in the city of Jackson. I have been working effectively with the Jackson Police Department. I have been working with our federal partners, ATF, FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office to be able to effectively communicate with those agencies as well. I have been working very effectively with the Capitol Police, and I communicate with people from the Capitol Police sometimes almost on a daily basis, if it's just to share information or to find out exactly is anything that I can do to assist them or let them know that we may need some assistance as well. So it's bigger than the Hinds County Sheriff's Office. It's bigger than the Jackson Police Department. It's a matter of everybody that can come together, elected officials, appointed officials, to be able to address the issue that we're facing in the city of Jackson.
Thank you, Sheriff. I do appreciate your testimony, appreciate you being here. Are there any questions for lady from Hinds?
Good morning, Sheriff. How are you?
Good morning.
I have just a few quick questions. You mentioned lack of officers. How many officers do you have? How many do you need? And is it the lack of officers due to lack of funding or just inability to actually find people to fill the positions?
Probably all of the above. Right now, of course, we have sworn personnel. We have operations division with the Hinds County Sheriff's Office, and we have detention staff. When we're talking about addressing crime, that refers to our operations division, our law enforcement division. And as of right now, I think I have probably anywhere from 70 to 80 deputies that are sworn. But these are not people that are always on the streets answering calls for service. This goes all the way from your patrol deputy all the way up to me as the sheriff and certified law enforcement officers with arrest powers that can effectively address crime. So you're talking about patrol, you're talking about investigations, your warrants division, your task forces, and we even have some certified deputies that work in the courthouses as court security and bailiffs. We are short. We need more personnel. We're short on money right now. I have been fighting for my men and women of the Sheriff's Office to get a raise. The Hinds County Sheriff's Office is way behind when it comes to effectively paying the deputies, the men and women that are out on the front lines, boots on the ground, that are answering calls for service. And this is a very fluid and ongoing conversations that I'm currently having with the people that are responsible for salaries, salary realignments, and salary increases. So yes, we need more money and we need more people as well.
How many more officers would you say, or deputies would you say you need?
I would probably say about 15 to 20 that I would like to have in our patrol operations division and in our investigations division as well. That way we can dedicate a few more resources to the city of Jackson. When we talk about our deputies that answer calls for service, if you are in unincorporated in rural Hinds County and you call 911, you're going to get a Hinds County deputy to respond to that call, because we are primarily responsible for those areas, whereas you have municipalities within Hinds County that are respectively responsible for that municipality as well. So we need more people in Hinds County, and I want to be able to dedicate more resources to the city of Jackson and have more of a presence here in the city of Jackson, while also addressing our rural and unincorporated Hinds County as well.
My follow-up question was, assuming you were able to get all of the deputies that you needed, would you be able to then allocate deputies within the city limits? How would that work? Explain to me sort of what you would be able to do for the city of Jackson with respect to crime.
You're absolutely right. That's why I say I want to be able to do that. We're talking about putting a group of people together specifically to address the city of Jackson. A group of deputies, some type of task force that we can have where they can work, again, collectively with other agencies to be able to address crime specifically in the city of Jackson. Because right now we have resources that we can put in the city of Jackson, but it's very limited. And we do put them in specific areas to address crime. You know, we did it earlier this year when we had the violent crimes that occurred in Belhaven. We were very successful and we worked effectively doing that operation, but I just use that as an example. When that was over, we had to pull those resources out of Belhaven and move elsewhere throughout the city of Jackson and Hinds County because, you know, Hinds County is big and we have other areas we have to go to. But if we had a group of deputies that can work specifically in the city of Jackson and that would be their sole responsibility and still have coverage in unincorporated and rural Hinds County, that would be very effective for us.
And when you use these task forces within the city limits, do you have to get permission from JPD since you're within the city limits, or how does that agreement, or how does that work?
No, ma'am. The Hinds County Sheriff's Office has jurisdiction throughout all of Hinds County. We don't necessarily have to let another agency know that we're conducting an operation within a municipality because we have county-wide jurisdiction. Now, if it's something that we feel may affect that municipality, we may let them know that we're within that municipality conducting an operation, or just out of respect to let them know that we are here. But other than that, no, we have jurisdiction and we don't have to get any type of permission to conduct operations in the city of Jackson.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Sheriff, can you, and you might not be able to tell me this, but could you tell me, or do you know, in Hinds County, city of Jackson, where is the highest concentration of your violent offenses?
I don't have those. I don't have a geographical area right now.
That's fine. I understand. I just didn't know if you could, off the top of your head.
You know, I would just be honest with you in full transparency. I think it is an issue. You've had violent crime in all areas of the city of Jackson. You know, we can't just necessarily say it's concentrated all the time in one specific area, because it's not. We've had violent crime in North Jackson, South Jackson, West Jackson, Northeast Jackson. So it is an issue that has occurred in the city, and I just don't have the geographical numbers to designate it to a specific area.
You said something that kind of piqued my interest in your opening about pretrial detainees and being in Raymond. You said that some of them had 5 to 6 years in pretrial, hadn't been to court in that long. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's very accurate.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have several detainees that are in our jail that have been there for 5 years, 6 years. Some of these individuals we arrested, or I arrested when I was with the Jackson Police Department in the Violent Crime Division. And I've been gone from there for several years and with the Hinds County Sheriff's Office, and they're still there awaiting trial, awaiting to go to trial.
And those are violent offenders, the 5 to 6?
Yes, sir. These are individuals that are charged with murder, aggravated assault, but mostly murder.
Will you, can you provide me with a list of those, not necessarily names or anything, but a number of how many of those inmates you have?
Yes, sir. I can.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other further questions? Lady from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sheriff. You're always so accessible, and I appreciate you. I understand that you said that your relationship with the Capitol Police is excellent. Could you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the City of Jackson Police?
I still have an effective relationship with the City of Jackson. I communicate with people there almost on a daily basis as well. Maybe not necessarily all of the time with the upper command staff, but maybe investigators or some of the people that's responsible for investigating some of the crimes. We have worked very effectively together to be able to address and solve some of the violent crimes as well. You know, sometimes people may bring me information or bring information to the Hinds County Sheriff's Office or me as an individual based on relationships that I formed through the years that may help solve some of the violent crime or solve a murder. I will in turn get that information and I will communicate with the people that are responsible at the Jackson Police Department for this, and it has been very effective regarding sharing information to help them solve some of the violent crimes as well. So I still have a very good working relationship with the Jackson Police Department. I tell people all the time, even though I'm no longer there, I still feel like I work for them because I still communicate with them. I'm a City of Jackson resident. I was born and raised here in the City of Jackson, so I will always have an invested interest in the City of Jackson because I want to see a difference and I want to make sure that we are communicating to make a change and do things different in the City of Jackson as well.
If you were king for the day, what would you have us do?
If I was king for a day, what would I have you all to do? I need money and I need manpower.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions from committee members? Lady from Hinds, Ms. Gibbs.
Thank you, Thank you, Sheriff Jones, for being here. You mentioned you want money. I understand that, and that if you had 15 to 20 more deputies, that you would be able to be more effective. Could you explain how effective you can be, and particularly when you talk about that there are gangs, and then you said that the robbery gangs were getting together in terms of committing felonies. So if you had the additional 15 to 20 deputies, how would that assist in that issue?
Well, they would be specifically addressing violent crimes in the City of Jackson, areas where there is an uptick in violent crimes, investigating violent crimes, and just being able to have more personnel in the City of Jackson. You have to think creatively as well when you're talking about addressing violent crime. You have individuals that can be prosecuted on the state level, but you also want to be able to prosecute some of these individuals on the federal level as well. This sends a strong message to the community, and it sends a strong message to these individuals that are committing some of these crimes, that not only will you be held accountable on the state level, but on the federal level as well. When I was with the police department back maybe 2015 to 2016, I saw how this worked personally. There was a double-digit decrease in violent crimes due to us working collaboratively with other agencies and our federal partners to be able to address violent crime in the City of Jackson. So when you have more personnel and you have that personnel assigned specifically to one task, then it shows that you have presence, you have individuals that are addressing the issue, and you have them holding these individuals accountable as well.
Thank you. So that staff that we're talking about, they may be boots on the ground, they may be in the administrative part, they may be part of task force work with other state and federal agencies, is what I hear you saying.
They're not going to be part of administration. They're going to be boots on the ground and investigating. So that's what we need. And I wouldn't necessarily use the word aggressive, but I will say that they will be addressing specifically one thing, and that is violent crimes or criminal activity in the City of Jackson. And again, effectively communicating with everybody that should be involved as well.
Thank you.
Any further? Gentleman from Union.
Thanks, Sheriff. Mr. Chairman, if there was a percentage of the calls that people you investigate that had mental health issues, could you just give me a percentage of that, please?
When we talk about mental health and law enforcement, mental health should always be addressed, and it's always an issue. I had this conversation the other day, and I just look at the pretrial detainees we have in jail right now. You probably have about 60% or more of those that are suffering from some type of mental health issue. And when I say mental health, I'm talking about all the way from a minor case of a mental health issue all the way up to a major. But we cannot always say that mental health or use mental health as an excuse for individuals that are committed some of these crimes to be able to not be held accountable. But yes, we do come in contact with several people on a daily basis that are suffering from some type of mental health issue. You have to bring the mental health experts in and have partnerships with mental health companies or mental health providers as well.
And are some of your officers trained in mental health? I know there's a couple of different levels you can go to.
Yes, sir. We have several officers that are trained in mental health. Just recently, I think last week, we have a partnership with Hinds Behavioral Health where they train officers in crisis intervention. And that's for officers to be able to effectively recognize mental health issues, be able to communicate with individuals they come in contact with regarding a mental health episode or a mental health issue, to be able to minimize situations to keep them from escalating, and to also be able to get them some of the help that they need. I wish that I had some of the mental health training some 23 years ago when I got started that's provided to law enforcement today, because there is a wide range of mental health training that is provided to officers, and we take this seriously, and I think that all officers should receive this mental health training as well.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any further questions for Sheriff? Sheriff, again, thank you for your time. You've provided us with a lot of information and some good information. We appreciate your service and your work for Hinds County and for Mississippi. Thank you. You're excused, and you're welcome to stay or head or whatever you need to do.
I'm going to hang out. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Our next is Bo Lucky, Chief of Capitol Police, and you're recognized. Thank you, Bo.
Good morning. I'd like to start by reading a statement from Commissioner Tindall, who couldn't be here today. He says, Chairman Bain, members of the House Judiciary Committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before this committee to discuss crime in the city of Jackson and the Capital Improvement District. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend today due to my speaking engagement at a symposium on cybersecurity for the state of Mississippi. Even though I'm unable to attend today's hearing, I want to let each of you know how thankful we are in the confidence that you have placed in the Department of Public Safety and the Capitol Police. Without your support, the strides we have made in public safety would not be possible. Chief Lucky and his team have done an excellent job and have my full support. We are committed to working with our law enforcement partners and making the capital city safe for all Mississippians. After all, our common objective is to remove the criminal element that has plagued the city for far too long, while also securing and maintaining the public trust. Again, thank you for your support. If any of you would like to discuss any issue with me personally, feel free to contact me at your convenience. And again, that's a statement from Commissioner Sean Tindall, who couldn't be here today. Now, I'd like to start by saying, thank you from me for allowing me to be here today as well. Sheriff Jones hit the nail on the head. He was spot on everything that he said. I couldn't have said it better. The short time that I have been here as Capitol Police Chief, I've noticed a lot of the same things that he's mentioned. There is let me start with one of the first things I've noticed is there seems to be a disrespect for authority in the youth in the Jackson area, and like he said, it's hard to pinpoint any certain area. However, it's certainly a problem, and it's certainly increasing. Like you said, we're starting to see a lot more individuals riding around with assault rifles in their laps, literally making Instagram stories and TikToks as they're riding around the city, pouring their narcotics out and counting it in front of the camera, fanning money around, and these individuals are youth. That's a problem. That's a problem that we're going to have to address somehow, and I don't have the answer for that right now. However, we are looking at ways to get more actively involved in the community in programs that can help to mentor our youth in a more effective manner. Like I said, most of what Sheriff Jones has mentioned, I couldn't have said it better, and I see it myself every day. Since I've been here, I'll tell you a little bit about what we have tried to do. When I started at Capitol Police, we had approximately 66 sworn law enforcement officers, since I know that question may be coming. Today, we're sitting at 104. I started on May 23rd of this year. Prior to us taking in the CCID, Capitol Police was primarily seen as more of a security force for the state grounds, this building being one of them. Our mission now is much different. We're here to assist JPD, we're here to assist Hinds County, we're here to assist our other state agencies and our other federal partners as much as possible, and that's what we're vowing to do. But in order to do that, we had to expand, and we're going to keep expanding. The 40 officers that we have hired so far has allowed us to expand our patrol division from 15 sworn law enforcement officers to approximately 36 so far. We have also activated a street crime suppression unit known as our Flex unit that consists of 11 sworn law enforcement officers. We have also increased our investigative division from 1 full-time officer to 3 full-time officers and 1 part-time. Our command staff was lacking. We had lieutenants answering to assistant chiefs, which is not a very efficient chain of command. Way too many officers and not enough command staff. We had to increase that. And what we try to do is make it as efficient as possible. So in building out the new organization of Capitol Police, we've separated these divisions somewhat. So now, instead of it being officers answering to 1 lieutenant or 1 assistant chief, we've now built out to where we have an assistant chief over patrol, an assistant chief over security, and an assistant chief over admin. Our security divisions obviously handles the buildings and mostly tries to take care of special events as well. That division consists of about 41 sworn law enforcement officers and 6 non-sworn security guards. We'll say we're trying to get more law enforcement officers on that side as well as non-sworn security guards on that side. Unfortunately, whenever you're working these buildings, it's going to be an 8-hour shift, which requires you to do a rotation of days off. And we're running into some issues with buildings opening up early, buildings closing late, things like that. But we are covering it. We're going to continue to have it covered, but we are trying to add some to that. So if there is anything that seems to be lacking on the security side, just know that we are working on that. On our patrol side, as I mentioned, when I started at Capitol Police, we had 15 sworn law enforcement officers that operated on 8-hour shifts. They are now operating on 12-hour shifts. So now you have 8 officers on the street at any given time, whereas prior to this, you had maybe 1, maybe 2. Just the day, whoever was off that day or whoever called in sick dictated how many people were there. Now it's pretty much a given. You're going to have a minimum of 8 sworn patrol officers on the streets at any given time. Our Flex unit also operates in the afternoon hours, generally from lunchtime to about 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That's going to be generally your high crime time periods, and we try to focus them in their efforts during that time period, that time frame. So with that said, there's usually about 6 of those officers also on the grounds, which brings your sworn law enforcement officer presence up to about 14 officers at any given time in the afternoon hours. On top of that, you also have, on the security side, you have units that are out roaming and patrolling. Usually that's about 4 or 5 officers. So again, that brings you up to about 18 officers at any given time in the afternoon hours during the Capital City Improvement District. Now, our flex unit's gotten a lot of attention lately, and it's pretty much what Sheriff Jones was speaking on when you speak on a violent crime unit or a street crime suppression unit. The purpose behind this unit was to have a group of individuals who are highly trained to deal with violent crimes, narcotics, things that are plaguing the city and causing a lot of the criminal activity here, or a fume of the criminal activity here. To give you an idea of how successful this unit has been, since July 18th of this year, they've made 59 felony arrests, 8 misdemeanor arrests, seized 29 firearms, 13 of those were stolen. Stolen property recovered, only 2 stolen vehicles recovered, 3. U.S. currency seized, $10,536. Narcotics seized, 6 pounds of marijuana, 2 ounces of methamphetamine, 100 MDMA dosage units, 20 grams of crack cocaine, 1 gram of fentanyl, 30 dosage units of hydrocodone. So they're out there, and what this group is doing and what makes them unique is they're not answering calls. These numbers that they're putting up is not from anybody calling and saying this is what's going on. This is from having boots on the ground out there and proactively policing the CCID, knowing what they're looking for and going after it. They operate with sources and CIs just much like a narcotics division would. Now, on top of their success in such a short period of time, our patrol division has also been very proactive in their efforts. Our patrol division so far has written approximately 984 citations. That's just in the last month. DUI arrest, only 1. However, I will say, I was told the other day that Sheriff Jones, his DUI unit, has reported to my guys that he has gotten 55 DUI arrests off of working with our checkpoints within the CCID. And we're happy that Sheriff Jones allows his DUI unit to work with us so closely, and we're more than happy to help him out in any way we can. Felony arrest on patrol was 23, misdemeanor arrest on patrol is 30. Stolen vehicles recovered on patrol is 5. So again, my patrol division is very proactive. They're out there enforcing the law. They're issuing citations. They're conducting safety checkpoints in random places throughout the city. And overall, they're letting the criminal element know that they're out there. They're being seen. They're being a deterrent. They're also letting the public know that we're out here. We're here for you. The success that we've seen, a lot of the compliments that I receive on a daily basis is based on the efforts of our patrol unit being out there so visible. I had an individual contact me last night, said he lives in the Belhaven area, said he walked his dog at night for the first time in a very long time. He said he felt safe and he appreciated everything that we're doing. Had another individual that contacted me whenever I first took over at Capitol Police and was pretty heated in the conversation, begging me to do something different. Said he was ready to leave, he was ready to move. And he called me, I guess it was Monday I spoke with him, just going on and on about how safe he feels and how appreciative he is for everything. And these individuals are not calling because we have, done anything specifically for them. It's because they see what we're doing as a whole. They see the visibility of patrol. They see that their neighborhoods are quieter now. They see that there's checkpoints around. I can't tell you how many times people have made the conversation about these safety checkpoints and how they make them feel safer, because it does show the criminal element that we're out there in full force. And that's what it's about with patrol, is deterrent, detecting the crime, enforcing the law, and deterring criminal activity. Now, our investigative division, another problem that we ran into when I started in May, or another thing that I've tried to address quickly, we had a large number of homeless in the CCID, and it was from the interstate all the way back to as far as CCID goes. I don't know how many of you in here have noticed, but if you get off the interstate on High Street today, you may see one or two randomly walking around. We've been able to be a visible presence for them as well. We take a zero tolerance on crime in general. It doesn't matter to us if you're homeless or if you're not. If you commit a crime, we're gonna arrest you. We're gonna cite you. We're gonna deal with you in the same way we would anybody else. And I think that's one of the factors that has helped us out in solving a lot of business burglaries that were going on. I don't know if y'all remember, but in one weekend, there was about 5 or 6 business burglaries right here together in downtown Jackson. We responded to those complaints on a Sunday. We responded to those complaints on a Saturday with a vandalized ATM machine here at, I believe it's Court Street, the Bancorp South, I believe, over here. We had that gentleman in custody the next morning. Our patrol division was able to find him, locate him, and we had him in custody the next morning, and he was charged with multiple other business burglaries. However, we learned during that investigation that he was not the only one. We were successful in finding the other culprits involved as well. We also had a rash of burglaries in downtown area not too long ago, and ended up charging an individual with, I believe it was 7 counts of business burglary. Some of the businesses he broken into multiple times in the course of a week and a half. These are problems that we see on a daily basis. When the foot traffic, the pedestrian traffic at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially with the homeless community is out like it is, you're going to have these issues. They're breaking in, and look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They're stealing food a lot of times. They're breaking into restaurants. They're breaking into vending machines. I think we've all seen that on social media. But we're not going to allow that to happen. And that's not something that can happen. We can't allow homelessness to be an excuse for criminal activity. So, we've also, in showing the proactiveness of this department, one of the first arrests we made whenever I started was for terroristic threats. On the fairgrounds, which is busy most days, if you remember the summer, we had numerous high schools doing their graduation ceremonies there. And social media was hit with some threats pointed towards one of the high school graduations. And when I was contacted, it was right after the Uvalde shootings. And, I told my guys, we're not going to sit back and just wait for something to happen. We're going to go forward head on, and that's what we did. We were able to arrest that individual in the early morning hours, probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, and he was charged with felony domestic threats or domestic terrorist threats. So we try to be proactive. We try to provide the law-abiding citizens with the level of security that they deserve, that they want. We want you all to feel safe. We want y'all to know that we are here for you. And at the same time, we try to show the criminal element that we're not going to tolerate anything. When we talk about deterrent, one of the hurdles we do face, as Sheriff Jones mentioned, is a backlog with the Hinds County justice system. You know, I tell people all the time, Hinds County is one of the few courtrooms that operates pretty much all day, every day. I mean, it's going. It's just a backlog that has been inherited from past administrations that has only grown. It's not, I don't blame anybody in particular for that backlog. I wouldn't know where to start to blame anybody. It's just, in my opinion, the crime in the city of Jackson has just been on such an uptick that I don't think anybody could have kept up with that docket. So what we have tried to do, as Sheriff Jones has mentioned, we have teamed up with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we have started sending a lot of our violent felonies to them, more specifically ones that involve your gun charges. I'm not sure how many cases we've sent to them as of yet. If I had to guess, it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 29 or 30 cases that we have presented to the U.S. Attorney's Office to date. And what that does, when you talk about like Sheriff Jones mentioned, some inmates sitting pretrial for 3, 4, 5 years, when you complain somebody in the federal system, they will go from complaint to sentencing in approximately 9 months. So that is, for lack of a better term, just lightning fast compared to our county system. And that right there is a deterrent enough to show people that, look, they're not playing around. They're going through the U.S. Attorney's Office. When you get complained 9 months from now, you're spending 5 years to 10 years for a gun crime that you may be out on the street for the next 5 years for, waiting to go through Hinds County system because it's backlogged the way it is. I think that's a huge deterrent there. And once we start getting some successful prosecutions on the federal side, I think it's just going to only get better. But, and my last thing I'll talk about is the collaboration between Hinds County and Jackson Police Department. I don't know how many of you here have been to the fair yet, but I think it's a great example of what we can do when we work together. I'd say the fair this year feels safer than it has in many years. It's just a different environment. It's more laid back. Just feels more family oriented. You feel safe. That's in part because of the plan that Commissioner Gibson's staff put together. It's a great plan. But the majority of the reason why the fair has been so successful this year and why you feel safe there is because of Sheriff Jones, Chief Davis, myself, and other agencies who have thrown manpower there to form this united front. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's going to take outside of the fair. That's what it's going to take on the streets. We've got to get boots on the ground together. We've got to work together. My staff works on a daily basis with Jackson Police Department's staff on the patrol side. Again, Sheriff Jones' staff works very well with us. I think my Assistant Chief over Patrol probably talks to Sheriff Jones, like he said, almost every day. And every time we've picked up the phone and requested anything from Jackson Police Department or Hinds County Sheriff's Department, they've been more than happy to help out. And we're going to do the same for them. When we talk about boots on the ground, like Sheriff Jones said, it's across the board. Law enforcement numbers are down. My numbers are up from where they were, obviously, but across the board, it is hard to find law enforcement officers. In today's environment, I would argue that it's extremely hard to find anybody that wants to be a police officer. Unfortunately, with the negativity surrounding law enforcement today, with the constant criticism, the constant spotlight, our applicant pool is slowly dwindling. Even with my pay raises and incentives that I've offered to hire people, it's not like it used to be. And I don't know what the answer is to get that back. The quality of applicants is not as high as it used to be, and the quantity is certainly not as high as it used to be. We could all use more money. We could all use more equipment, and we all need more law enforcement officers. We need more help out there. But I don't know how to get that. And we're going to try to actually start incorporating some more aggressive recruitment efforts. I met with National Guard yesterday about trying to get involved in a work program they have to provide servicemen and women with employment. I believe they were telling me Chief Davis is already involved in that program and working with them, has been for some time now. We're trying all we can to get more people involved in law enforcement, get more professional, proactive, passionate people involved in law enforcement. And it's a challenge, but I think we can do it. And again, thank y'all for allowing me to be here today. And I'm here for anything you may need.
Chief, thank you. First off, let me ask you, you stated, if I heard the numbers right, when you began, you were at 66, is that right? Now you're up to over 100?
100, yes sir, 104.
Is that, like you said, obviously everybody could use more, but do you feel that that's an adequate number at where you're at?
It is not.
What would you estimate? You heard Sheriff talk about another 15 to 20 officers. Of course, Hinds County is much larger than the CCID, so I'm just curious.
Yes, sir. Right now, the anticipated number of employees for Capitol Police this time next year is going to be somewhere around 150 to 160. And the reason for that is going to be because we're more than just patrol. We're more than just having people on the streets. We need more manpower in our security division to help out with the security of these buildings. We need more manpower in investigative division. We need more manpower in our command staff still, mainly with training, fleet, things like that. We need more manpower on patrol. And all those areas, different areas, we're trying to build up the diversity and enforcement. We're going to need more manpower.
Okay. Questions from committee members? I saw Lady from Pearl River first. You recognized.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Sheriff Jones, for all that y'all are doing, and congratulations on the victories you're having. I would just like to make a few statements. Y'all have addressed all the issues and things that you're battling in the field. I want to address this summer, I went to a leadership conference, and the speaker and I were the only two in attendance there from Mississippi. And one of the things that they were talking about when we were there was crime across this nation, and how bad it is, and it comes on down home. They also addressed the so-called criminal justice reforms that the state legislatures have been passing, and how that we were duped by the reforms, that they weren't really reforms, and how much problems that we've had from those. So So I say that to say that as you're trying to do your jobs, I want to work with all of our law enforcement, DA, sheriffs, police chiefs. The speaker has committed to work with me to, if we need to repeal some things or pass new legislation to help you guys, and I look forward to working with our Chairman Bain to address some of these things, because we want to do legislatively what we can do also to help you with these things. So these things on like either expungements, habitual offenders, some early releases. I know like I've heard about shoplifting, how they know the dollar amount for felony, and so maybe we need a cumulative amount so that they go in all these individual times and they never get charged with a felony because it's always under the amount and they don't add together. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do maybe to help y'all with those things and look at some of the mistakes that we've made in the past and do better as well. So I thank y'all for what you're doing, and just ask if you will think about those and get with me before session, and let's work on some legislation to help y'all in those areas as well.
Lady from Hinds, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have a few questions. So you and I know the boundaries of the CCID, obviously, but those who live within or just outside of those boundaries may not be exactly familiar. So if someone has an issue, they call 911, are they automatically directed to either Capitol Police or JPD or the Sheriff's Department? How does that work for just an individual that needs assistance?
So we do not have a 911 center at Capitol Police. Jackson Police Department is who responds to 911 calls. I've had conversations with Chief Davis that I understand he is short on manpower. I understand that he has officers that are spread out in further areas than just the CCID, and it may take them some time to get there. We have talked about transitioning phone calls over to Capitol Police, and they are doing that. So when JPD receives a 911 call, if their officers are tied up somewhere else, if their officers are busy on another call, then they will forward that phone call to Capitol Police in a timely manner to where we can respond to it and deal with the call.
Is there a better system that you could envision so that the person that's calling 911 is not left waiting? For instance, I'll use myself as an example. I mean, if I'm home alone with my 7-year-old and there's a home invasion happening, I call 911 and I'm being rerouted because somebody's too busy to come and help. I feel like there has to be a better solution for that. Do you have a suggestion?
We have looked at, and we are looking at, whenever we get our new police department over here, the new at the Wright and Ferguson, we are looking at having a 911 line at that point. We've talked to AT&T, who is over that, about geofencing the area and everything that's involved in that. I mean, that's really going to be the most effective thing that I can think of, is that if we had our own 911, which we are looking at.
My next question, hypothetically speaking, do you feel like the structure that you've created with Capitol Police as it currently exists would work if the CCID were expanded? In other words, do you feel like you would be able to cover more ground, assuming you had more officers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We could, the structure that I've built at Capitol Police is the foundation of the police department itself is strong. It's there, and just adding more numbers to the officers, to the investigators, to the security side, to the wherever needed, that we can certainly cover more ground if need be.
And my last question, the flex unit that you mentioned, those officers are in unmarked vehicles, is that accurate?
That is.
And they're in plain clothes but with vest on, is that right?
Correct.
A group of us with young children were out having dinner, and we saw those men stop a vehicle, pull 3 men out of the vehicle and several guns out of the vehicle just a few feet from where we were having dinner in Belhaven. So tell them thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I will let them know.
Are there any further questions, lady from Hinds, Ms. Gibbs?
Thank you, Chairman Bain, and thank you, Chief Luckett, for being here. I conducted a hearing during the last legislative session with Commissioner Tyndall and Chief Davis that was in that meeting, and we talked about the 911 calls. And at that time, as I understand, and Chief Davis can also correct me, is that those calls was coming into JPD, and you just mentioned that those calls are then transferred to you. I understood at that meeting that it would take a year to 2 years before the Capitol Police could have that system set up. And I believe it was your intention, as far as the Capitol Police, to have their own 911 system. Is that correct, that you all want to have your own 911 system coming into you versus going into JPD and having to transfer it over? Is that correct?
Okay, so like I mentioned, we're talking about having the capabilities by the time we move into the Wright-Ferguson, which I should have mentioned is probably about 1.5 to 2 years away. So you're correct on your timeline. Now, we are looking at buying more dispatch equipment to beef up our dispatch to handle the large number of calls that we will be receiving when we do go, or if we do go, with a 911 call center. Now, the commissioner has not told me directly that it is his plan to have a 911 call center, because historically the state is not the primary responding agency within any jurisdiction. We're here primarily to assist with assets and resources, manpower. However, we would like to have the capability there in case the need arises for us to have a 911 call center.
And so with the increased staff that you have, 104, I believe you said at this time, and you could at least have 150 to 160 officers. So those officers are basically monitoring the Capitol Complex district area. Is that correct? They're just monitoring the area, and if they get a 911 call, then they are dispatched at that time.
Correct.
Okay. Another question I would like to know, you talked about the homelessness in terms of the people that are on the streets breaking into businesses because they're hungry and things like that. Do you have any solutions for that? Have you worked with those agencies that deal with homelessness on the streets of the city of Jackson?
I have worked with Shower Power in the past. We're looking at, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to try to come up with some better solutions to some of the problems we're identifying. I mean, I've only been there 5 months. I've been trying to get this department up and going and restructured for the past 5 months. But we have every intention of trying to get more involved with individuals that are working in the community with the homeless and also with our youth.
Okay, well, thank you, and I hope that we're going to be able to work on the 911 calls in terms of when citizens want to call in, whether those calls go to JBD. We have enough staff to handle that. I think our constituents are concerned about that, as Representative Yates mentioned, where those calls go, and having adequate police officers to be able to address that issue on the first 911 call. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, briefly, could you explain to those of us that don't know, the best of your ability, the boundary lines and of the CCID at the Complex District, Capitol Complex?
So the CCID on the south side boundary is South Street. It runs South Street out and takes in JSU, and once it takes in JSU, it cuts back up to Bailey Avenue. It then runs north on Bailey Avenue up into the Woodrow Wilson area, where it takes a slight deviation and cuts out, and I can't remember the street name, forgive me, but cuts west just a little bit, and then continues north up through the Fondren business area, to where then it cuts back in, the boundary line cuts back in east, and then there's a odd-shaped triangle at the top of the Fondren area that goes to Meadowbrook. Now, our east side boundaries, we have, and this is where it gets a little odd, we have to Ridgewood Road on Lakeland, and then we take in the Ag Museum and all that area there, LaFleur Park, all that. And then it cuts back up to Interstate 55 South around Fortification, or just past Fortification. We go back up to 55 and back down in line with South Street. North of Lakeland, we have basically the Ag Museum and Smithwell Stadium, that area. But we stop right at the district. So it's literally, depending on which side of the street you're on, the district, as to whether or not you're in the CCID or JPD. So, like I said, the boundaries in the north section of the CCID is a little irregular and could use some revision. To be honest with you, it's a little muddled.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Chief? Chief, again, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for coming. We appreciate your work. We always stand ready to help you in any way possible, okay?
Thank you.
I'm going to move down the agenda. Again, I see my good friend and a friend of the committee, the District Attorney of Hinds County, Jody Owens, at the end. If Jody, you are recognized when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague, ADA Joachim Lehman, is passing out to the committee members about 6 or 7 documents that I'd like to aid my comments today. I think it's important that we make these conversations fruitful by providing the committee with the actual data of what we're seeing in the city of Jackson, the capital city, and in Hinds County, as we try to explain where we are and how we got here. I'll start first by making some brief comments, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Again, good morning. My name is Jody Owens. I'm the Hinds County District Attorney. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today regarding the state of crime in the capital city. Like many of you as thought leaders, we've worked hard to come up with a solution to have a manageable justice system in the capital city. But first, we must acknowledge that we have very serious and real problems. I was sworn into office on January 1, 2000, as a district attorney here in the capital city. As you can see in the first handout, in 2018 and 2019, we had a homicide rate of 84 and 81 individuals respectively. And that's just a handout here for those who are following me. Subsequently, over the first 2 years of my administration, we saw increases of 130 and 154 homicides. That represents a 60.5% increase the first year and a 78.5% increase over next year. I'm sad to say that we have more than 25% of the homicides in the state of Mississippi, which is represented by the next 3 documents that speak to the homicide rate by county in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Chairman Baines, if you follow, you will notice that Hinds County in 2022, which is the year still going right now, has 115 homicides. And sadly, we had 3 homicides last night. In 2021, we had 156 homicides in Hinds County. And again, in 2020, 139. Again, that's more than 26% right now of the entire state of Mississippi. The problems are complex, and there's no single problem or solution to crime. Whether it's the family unit, the absence of faith-based support, schools that need improving, economic opportunities, or just an understaffed and overwhelmed criminal justice system. It's important to note that the District Attorney's Office for the state of Mississippi is a state agency. My actual title is the 7th Judicial State Attorney's position. And the state has funded all of our attorneys and selects how many attorneys we have per every district attorney office in all your respective counties. If you look at the chart, my next handout chart, you will look at legislation from 2014. It looks like this. So since 2007, the legislature has not funded any full-time additional positions for the Hinds County Capital City District Attorney's Office. But in 2014, almost every district attorney office received additional resources, but the one who needed it the most, that being in the capital city. So we have fought the need for more resources since we got here. And in 2020, we first came to the legislature and asked for additional resources, and unfortunately, we were not successful. We had the conversation, we spoke to the state's leadership to provide them with the data that we were actually doing our job, and if you gave us the resources that we needed, having the most crime, having one of the most populous counties in the state, that we could do more, comparatively. And again, right now, the state statute only gives us 11 assistant district attorneys. The statute calls assistant district attorneys legal assistants. So when you look at that document that says legal assistants, they're actually referring to assistant district attorneys. So just if you look at the 11 ADAs that we have in our office, and you compare that to the number of homicides that we have just in the capital, just homicides, you will find that our district attorney's office is the largest, with the largest volume of crime, but vastly understaffed. And we've been that way since 2007, despite other district attorney's office getting more resources, which is why we work within the Prosecutors Association, and we request additional resources year after year after year. But Chairman Banks, what we did was we started trying to show you all as thought leaders what we were doing. So we showed you the next handouts was how many individuals that were being caught by the Jackson Police Department and now the Capital City Police, how many individuals were being indicted for crimes. So when people try to understand what's actually happening in Hinds County, I think it's important for you to realize that people are being arrested and people are being indicted. And astronomical numbers, and I would challenge you to compare these numbers to any other district attorney's office in the state. We are indicting thousands of individuals every year, and in fact, every month, we're indicting individuals at just astronomical rates. But every year we've come back to this body and we've not been able to get resources until last year. Last year was a game changer for crime in the capital city. Last year, a unique group of individuals came together, and we thank you for what you did. We're working right now with the state public defender. My counterpart, Gail Lowry, the Hinds County Public Defender, is in this office. I see my good friend Chief Justice Randolph and his group. We're working together with a plan, and that plan has come together, and let me tell you about that plan. That plan has afforded us the opportunity that when this bill was signed by the governor and the resources were released in July, to allow us to have, for a limited period of time, just 1 year's funding, 6 new ADAs. For a limited period of time, we have 4 special court judges that have been appointed to the capital city. For a limited period of time, the Public Defender's Office has new resources because if we're being realistic, more than 80% of the crimes that are committed are individuals in the public defender system, and if we don't fund that system, we can't get the funding on crime. Because if I have a bunch of ADAs, it doesn't make a difference if we can't vet the cases appropriately. But one of the things I want to make sure I highlight here is that in this chart right here, this is before our special judges are here. In Hinds County in the last 10 months, we've had 25 jury trials. We've had 500 cases resolved, 275 guilty pleas. You know, we're doing a lot. That's the existing 4 circuit court judges. That's before we've had any trial whatsoever. We've had 79% of all active cases disposed. So we're doing so much with so little. But if you look at where we are now, with our new judges, that being Judge Valor, who of course comes from Representative Hinds' Warren County, Judge Sanders, who's coming from Representative Horan in Osborne County, and Representative Harworth, coming from Representative Williams, Representative Stevenson in Creekmore County. Like, we have this unique possibility in Hinds County and the capital city to get it right, but we don't even know what that looks like now because we just had our first docket call this week. So, as you know, in your process, you go through your process, we get the resources which we got in July. Our office, as well as Gail's team, hired all new lawyers, which is difficult to do, but we did that in 2 months. We have new teams to help fight this thing, and we talk about police with Chief Luckett and Chief Davis and hundreds of officers. But we're talking about a small group of lawyers that you need to prosecute people. The example I give people all the time is when someone breaks out of jail, we get the SWAT team, the dogs, the helicopters, we go looking for them, right? But when you put them in that jail, how few people are you funding to prosecute them? How few people are you funding to determine whether or not they need to be misdemeanors or they need drug treatment or mental health treatment? And that's why I think today I want you to know that What you've done so far has been significant, but as the gentle lady asked, she said, well, if you were king for the day, I would say you have to make this permanent. I would say you at least have to fund it for a minimum of 2 or 3 years to see what we can do. It's so difficult for us who are hiring lawyers to hire them for 1 year. The 6 lawyers I've hired from the Attorney General's office, of the DA offices, of the prosecutors, because they believe in the capital city. They want the capital city to be great. But if we have 1 year of funding and this is not duplicated next year, it was all for naught. We just had our first docket call this week because it takes time for judges to get those dockets. The Chief Justice has given all the new judges pieces of the existing judges' cases, right? So everybody understands the problem that our volume is too high. We have to do something about it, and we have to fund the system appropriately, which we've never done in the last decade, despite funding other systems. And the last thing I would leave you with is that there's 4 pages of notable prosecutions. It's not accurate to say that people in the capital city are not being prosecuted. We're giving people life in 30 years, time and time and time again. But the volume is just so high that it's newsworthy and it hits the media cycles. But people are working really hard and really diligent, and we're going to keep doing that. But we need consistent funding. And at the very least, we need you to do what you did last year again, so we can be in a place to show you that if we've already done 26 trials in a year without any new judges, let's show you we can do 50 in a year. Because you know, and those who represent people, it's not the trials that move the dockets to pleas. But to be able to be in a position to get pleas, we have to be able to have trial and judges who are ready. But our existing judges are doing more than any other judges in the state of Mississippi. Again, 25% of the violent crime by way of murders happens in one county. And that county has the same budget, roughly $79,000 allocated from the state as every other county. And some of those counties have 3 homicides a year. Yet and still, when I have 160 homicides last year, I'm trying to get the crime lab. I'm trying to get X-rays. I'm trying to get DNA tests. So when you look at the problem, really look at the solution as being fund us appropriately, support us, because our challenges are very different than anywhere else in the state. Our white-collar crime group that many of you know because of DHS prosecution has more challenges because we are tasked with that. If you all are threatened when you're here in Capital City, or the governor's threatened, or the lieutenant governor's threatened, or the speaker's threatened, those cases come to our office. So we prosecute more related to state agencies than anyone else with the same resources as everyone else. At this time, I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jody, we appreciate your testimony, appreciate what you're doing. My understanding, okay, just for the record, I guess, and to clear it up, you have 6 new ADAs, is that right?
Yes, sir. I was allowed a certain amount of money to get investigators, ADAs, and paralegals. We have 6 currently. The funding has only, for 1 year component. With a commitment to do 2 years, hopefully. We're working with some great groups, but right now the 6 just got their dockets, but they've been working in existing cases as soon as we've hired them.
Okay, and the judges are in place, the new...
They all have been reached out to about their docket calls, and they're all currently scheduled. Unfortunately, as you know, this time of year things somewhat slow down with the courts as you get into the holidays, but the judges have been appointed. They have dockets, and all have been coordinated with. One of the additional challenges that we have that particularly my good friend Greg Snowden has been helpful with is locations. Judges need courtrooms, they have juries, but now are in trials, and we've had an amazing synergy. Everyone from now Commissioner Gibson and people have offered space. I think they've even allowed us to use the elbow room from time to time. And we've looked at spaces to have trials to move the docket, but this has been a massive undertaking. I mean, we've essentially tried to double our system temporarily, and that's been hard.
How far out are you in starting those cases, those trials in those places?
Realistically, I think we could probably have trials in the next 30 days. I mean, we've had to fix ceilings and chairs and create space for people. So again, I think that what you would see, if you would invite me to come back sometime in the spring, I could show you an increased number of cases that we're resolving. But you really won't see the full thing until we have a year. And you need to see a year of this working that way in all fronts. I mean, I talk to the chief about this all the time. The best practices in the country are from someone being arrested to prosecutor, or a case being resolved in a year's time. When we were elected, we were closer to almost 2.5 years. Now we're about a year and 16, 17 months, albeit some of the things they discussed with you and the sheriff, mental health examinations, that can extend the case 2 or 3 years.
And crime lab issues, sure.
Yes, sir.
When that gets up and running, I'm just curious as to the whole procedure of that. The judges are going to be, they're full circuit judges.
They're senior status judges who are all part-time judges, so what we anticipate is those judges being able to do up to 2 trials a month.
That's where I was going. Are these judges going to be do you anticipate them having more trials, more pleas? Is this a mechanism to kind of funnel trials of these judges, or is it just they're going to do what they have their own docket and they take care of their cases, however those cases are disposed, that's how they're disposed?
That's correct. They'll do both trials and pleas and run their dockets, and hopefully the Chief Justice will continue to identify more cases. I mean, we're all working in collaboration with each other.
Okay. Any questions for... Yeah, how are those... Tell us, how are those cases assigned? By the senior circuit judge, by Chief Justice, or is it just pick a straw?
I believe that the Chief Justice asked the existing circuit court judges to identify cases to be released to those judges thus far. The Chief Justice does have the authority within his purview to take parts of the docket himself, but I think we're working in conjunction with each other so far.
Okay. Okay, so there's no really, like Sheriff Jones gave something that bothered me. He said that there were some people in his jail who have been there for 5-6 years pre-trial. Those type of cases are still just, they're not going to get priority under these new judges, or...
Well, certainly the jail population always gets priority. If you look at the list of notable cases that have happened in the last 2 years, if you look at those case numbers, you will see that some of those case numbers are 4 and 5 years old. Those are the cases that we're trying to try. We get a list every month from the sheriff office of those individuals who've been in the jail and for how long. Right. Our priority is to make sure they've been indicted and their cases are moving and nothing's stopping those cases from moving. Procedurally, there are things that halt those cases, again, like we mentioned, but no one should be at the jail pre-trial detention that period of time. Our goal is to get those individuals prosecuted and in the OC's custody.
I understand. Any questions from committee members? Gentleman from Pearl River.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Just a quick question. What wait time are you seeing with the state hospital as far as competency exams are concerned?
Minimum a year. There's generally 2 years for us. There's the wait for beds. Obviously, we have the highest population of individuals waiting for beds. And then getting those reports back. And then, again, whether you're restoring an individual who he or she could be competent for trial. Alternatively, on our end, as the state, we want to see and wait that process out. So 2.5 years is very normal for us. I think that if you look at the sheriff's population and those individuals who are waiting, a vast majority are waiting for those beds, all those examinations, and that again, that's very different for the system.
And that was going to be my follow-up, just to provide clarity to the committee. So when you're waiting for a bed at the state hospital to be examined, you're waiting in the jail, is that correct?
Correct. The jail is a de facto mental health asylum at that point, a facility. They can't provide the resources, and what we're seeing is those individuals are the most disruptive, obviously, in the jail, the most self-harm, and those individuals, unfortunately, that's the system we have in place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think I saw a lady from Hinds.
Thank you, DA, for being here today. Could you just clarify something for me? Because I think all of you all have mentioned about the backlog. And I'm hearing the backlog starts at the beginning with law enforcement in terms of arresting people, and now they're in jail and they're waiting pre-trial. And so that's a backlog because the increase of crime, I guess. Don't let me put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to repeat what I'm understanding. So there's a backlog from that perspective. But when it gets to the circuit court perspective, I understand we have provided funding for senior staff judges now to come and help with that load. So I'm trying to figure out where the backlog is as it relates to the circuit court piece, because we have increased the number, well, we haven't increased the number of circuit court judges, and I know that's been an issue as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so are we saying that we need additional circuit court judges because we now have senior staff judges that are helping because of the backlog? I'm just trying to figure out strategically in my mind,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
circuit court is in the middle, law enforcement on one side, and then we got appointed senior judges on the other side. What do we need to do to help with that flow, perhaps on more of a permanent basis?
And I think we use the term backlog to mean a lot of different things. I think the challenge would be really to understand that when you have 80% increase in 2 years of homicides, you also have generally 80% increase of all crimes. So when you have 4 circuit court judges who are working diligently, but half of their dockets are civil, and then you give them 80% more work to do, that's difficult, if not impossible, for anyone. When we look at the backlog, we look at about, case volume, are we moving cases, and do we have the resources to move cases quick enough? I think in many ways, the volume is synonymous with backlog because the volume is so high. We certainly need a permanent judicial seat in the capital city. Other districts throughout the state have got that in the same amount of time. We don't have that. And I think most people will agree with that. When you look at the special judges, one of the things that Chief Justice and I discussed was that we wanted to make sure that the defendant's rights were protected. And he picks special judges who were senior judges who had low rates of appeals, because it's an expensive process and you don't want to waste the taxpayers' time and then have to do it all over again. So we wanted to make sure we identified judges with the experience and the record that could make sure that they knew what they were doing, and I think we've done that so far.
That it,
Thank you.
lady. Okay. Any further questions for Mr. DA? I think that's it. Jody, thank you. You're always welcome to this committee. We appreciate your hard work. And like I tell the sheriff, you're free to stay or to go. But we do appreciate you coming here. And anything we can do, we stand ready.
Thank you so very much.
All right. Next up is a good friend, Andre DeGreet. Andre, if you'll come, you've testified a number of times, so you recognize when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and thank you all for allowing me to be here, inviting me to be here. It's a wonderful opportunity. I was excited to hear that this committee wanted to specifically look at what's going on in Jackson. I am Andre DeGree, the state public defender, so I speak for public defenders all over the state. We're looking to make changes and reforms in the public defender system all over the state, but I'm also been a resident of Jackson for over 35 years. My wife and I have raised 5 children here. 3 of my adult children, or 2 of my 3 adult children, have returned to Jackson. They starting their careers in Jackson. None of them living with me, so that's good. I also spent early in my career 5.5 years in the Hinds County Public Defender System. And then, of course, most recently, as has been mentioned, I'm having an opportunity, maybe at the end of my career, to come back and work closely with the Hinds County Public Defender's Office. As the district attorney alluded to, this has been, getting started on this project has been difficult. It's been a challenge, particularly that 1-year limit to try to bring in experienced lawyers, and that's what we knew we were going to have. We had to sit down, and Gail Lowry, our Hinds County Public Defender, is here today. Gail and I started meeting early on to figure out how we meet this challenge, knowing full well what we were jumping into. We had from the defense perspective, I think, some additional challenges, because while we have all of these people in this backlog system, and there's no question there's a backlog, that they all had attorneys. a few, had retained counsel, some conflict outside counsel, and we've assumed some of those cases, as well as the majority of what we're doing is coming in with the Hinds County Public Defender's Office, not to take over their cases, but to handle these cases with them. And much like what we see with Capitol Police and Jackson Police working together and the sheriff working together, that if you bring more people in, even though they're in different agencies, there's only so much time in the day for the officer to patrol, for the attorney to work on his cases. And so we determined that bringing in, coming in as a second attorney with the already established relationship and not disturbing that between attorney and client. I suspect most of you have not been in the system in that capacity, where you're a client depending upon a lawyer to protect you. And you really need that relationship to be strong. And so we have basically blending cultures from two different offices and two different styles. Those of you who know me will find this as a surprise, but I'm not always easy to get along with. And so blending that in, and then on the individual cases, it has been a challenge. Our lawyers, and we've got the first 2 pages, I like to say it's 1 page because it's front and back, but it's technically 2 pages, is an overview of what we have developed in this program. So while the judges just got appointed last month, our lawyers have been working since August 1. We have some challenges in how we're setting it up, but you see on the 2nd page, we have some goals, and our goals are to reduce the jail population and to particularly reduce the jail, not just pretrial detention, that's what's supposed to be in the jail, but the unindicted, what's been referred to in the media as the dead zone, people who go from their preliminary hearing until they are indicted. And the number that, and the sheriff, I would say, is doing, because I've got some data pictures in here for you. The sheriff is collecting very good data and sharing it, which is really important, because too many agencies are operating in these silos, looking at their own data and not sharing it. But the sheriff has, you're asking for who's in the jail, Mr. Chairman. He can tell you. He can tell you why they're there, how long they've been there. And so when we started looking at that data, initially we thought we were going to come in, we were going to take a whole bunch of homicide cases. So we hired lawyers who were experienced in homicide cases, and we'd be trying cases. And what we found was, while that's certainly the biggest problem, it's not the only problem. And so we have, working with the Public Defender's Office, we are shifting some of our focus this week, really. We're taking 100 of these 200, I think, from the sheriff's last report, the not indicted for, they've been in jail for 90 days or more and aren't indicted yet, 221 people. And the majority of those are public defender clients. And so we're taking almost 100 of those cases. We're going through them right now. We've already found somebody who has been indicted, and it just hadn't updated in the system yet. But for the most part, these are, we're going to take these, I think it's around 90 people, the numbers in the report, and we're going to start meeting with them. And I told, it's a part of the system that Ms. Lowry is very concerned about, that their lawyers handling most of these 25 trials and moving these pleas just don't have the time to focus on that. And so we're going to dedicate a good chunk of our time on those cases. And these are some people who maybe they should be on bail. We got to look into that. But we think a lot of these people would be able to plea on information. It's actually a model that comes out of Rankin County, that they hired a new public defender because they had a system where you had representation at the preliminary hearing, and then you had no lawyer until you got indicted. And after the new rules came out from the Supreme Court, Judge Empfinger, then the senior circuit judge, changed how they did it, and he convinced the Board of Supervisors to hire another lawyer just to handle those, what I'll call the dead zone cases. And they're just different things you can do. It's not always bail advocacy, although we know that there are people getting left behind there. But we know it's also, these are people that can resolve this case. And rather than waiting for the district attorney to be able to get it, and I think he alluded to this a little bit, we can screen these cases and take them to him to plea on an information. And certainly identifying the huge problem with the mental health population. We're talking about hundreds of people in there, and a lot of it is, as one of the earlier speakers talked about, the homelessness problem isn't just homelessness, it's also mental health. There's a lot of crossover there. And then you have the breaking into buildings. So these are not violent crimes. They have to be addressed, but we need to find a way to address them without clogging the system further, and to get people both help and to prevent these future crimes. And so one of the components that we want to introduce here that hasn't been done in indigent defense in Mississippi, and again, needing an experienced person who can work, they have to work part-time. They're not going to quit a job on a 9-month promise, but we want to bring social workers in, and we're going to bring multiple on contract to work with these lawyers to identify problems and solutions for these people, because that's what the social worker brings. It's, you do enough criminal defense work, you can identify a mental health problem, but you don't know what the solution is, or even a homelessness problem, but you don't know the solution. And so introducing social work to this, we think is going to be very beneficial. Now, going past that, as we started, and I would say the first thing you need to do before you make any decisions on is to ask the king for his data. Don't just say, you're the king for the day, tell me what to do. We have to look at the data. And so what we started in these early meetings, of first with the public defender, and then I've met individually with 3 of the 4 judges, and also we've had some meetings where the judges and the prosecutors and the defenders were in the same meeting, and then the defenders and the prosecutors are meeting individually, just without the judges present. Sometimes we just have to do that, just like they meet without us. So one of the first things we wanted to know, where, we're hearing about this backlog. We know, we hear in the media what's about crimes. So what the district attorney brought to the first meeting was some data from JPD that was comparing, the meeting was on June 2nd, so they went through May. So we took that data that they provided and the available public data and tried to do a chart that sort of compares. This is just 5 months, it's not a full year. We're asking for update to that data, but you can see, this is from the Major Crimes Division report of JPD, that crime has been fluctuating, and these are crime reports, not necessarily arrests. We've talked about, earlier speakers have talked about what they call clearance rates. So this isn't necessarily impacting the legal system yet, because there are people that haven't been arrested. But the one clear thing, when you look at across the pre-pandemic years, the pandemic years, where we are today, a 30% increase in homicides over the 3-year average before, and it was already going up. So that number, from when you look, if you look back to the early months of 2019, 39 homicides. The first 5 months of 2022, 59 homicides. So I do want to say one thing, because people often talk about youth and look to youth, and I appreciate the sheriff saying he's also seeing the youth as victims. That's happening. But we track data all over the state because of U.S. Supreme Court decision that allows youth under 18 to have a sentencing option on a homicide case or any case that carries a life sentence. So we've been tracking that data, and I can tell you that youth crime, homicides where a youth is the suspect, have increased in Jackson or in Hinds County, because we track it by county. But they are not responsible for this doubling of homicides. And the increase among youth is a smaller percentage than the total increase in homicides. So it is across the board, and but this is not simply a problem of youth being out of control. And so, but you know, when we talk about 36 kids in youth detention charged as adults being housed for adult crimes, that's way too many. I do want to tell you that what we've got, the next page you see is criminal dispositions, and this comes from the AOC across, this is all criminal cases, and comparing it to the 7th Circuit Court District. So we've had a decade of declining dispositions. Now, there's a huge gap in this data, and I want you to know we're working on this because the HB 585 required cities and counties to also, justice courts, to start collecting data on their dispositions. And so we now have about 6 years of data, and we're going to isolate the city of Jackson, Jackson Municipal Court, and then just the violent felonies, and see where they are compared over years, what's trends happening. So by the start of the session, I think we will have the middle picture in this display that's probably, I think, the most important. Who's coming into the system? You'll be able to see in that, and it comes in 6-month chunks, so you can look at it in 6 months and in a year and in 2 years, people who are arrested, released, and rearrested. And I think, you know, it happens, and none of us would on the defense side would pretend it doesn't happen. I think we're going to find that it doesn't happen as nearly as often as people believe it does. But that's a gap in the data. The next two are the new data from the FBI on just trends, and this is comparing Mississippi and the nation. And I will tell you, it cuts off at 2020 because there are a lot of questions. They've shifted to a new data system, and not everyone's reporting. And as far as I know, the city of Jackson's not reporting to the FBI their uniform crime reports. So this is just the data through the old system in 2020, where we see trends, and they have property offenses and violent offenses separately. And so we see where the uptick is in violent offenses. And that's during the very beginning of, or the first year of COVID. And so what we see more of, what we're looking at in the city of Jackson is really homicides. It's not just violent crimes, it's homicides that are the real problem. So the next picture I have is we've talked about this big blue bar here of what this legislature appropriated to the Capitol Police, and we've already heard, and I know they are asking for even more. But right now they've got about $12 million, looks like $11 million of state funding. That's on top of what the city is doing and the county is doing. The district attorney told you about, he's a state official. The vast majority of his budget comes from you. What we're spending on the prosecution, what we're spending on the courts, and there's been, I would say, yes to the district attorney saying maybe we need another judge. I would say from our meetings with these judges over the last 6 months, and the fact that they're telling you they've done 25 trials, they may be wearing out, but they are doing, the problem with this backlog is not the courts. I'm not saying they don't need another judge. I think they may be, but they'll make that case for you. But there's nothing, we're not spending anything other than this year, 1 year of ARPA funds on the Sixth Amendment. The right to counsel that the vast majority of people who are brought into the criminal legal system cannot afford a lawyer, and they languish in jail because they can't afford a lawyer, nobody to advocate for them, they're stuck there. And so the last document is what the latest version of our next step, because again, I'm the state public defender, not the Jackson public defender, but we've got a plan. We need improvements all over the state. But if you turn to the last page, we have a unique model that we would like to introduce in the city of Jackson, and it would bring together not just that it would be unique in the state of Mississippi. It's not unique everywhere. It's been implemented in the city of Detroit. It started in the city of New York, and it would blend together not just lawyers who represent people on felony cases, but they could also handle municipal court misdemeanors. They also that would be the house for our parent defender, who the largest population of foster kids is always fluctuating between Harrison and Hinds County, and we're funding a part-time parent defender, and we would want to bring that in and give them access, both full-time and access to social workers, because this office would include social workers and investigators. And I think we have a concept paper that we're working on with the neighborhood defender on what it would be. And the advantage to this is that they would also bring in private funds and to include a civil legal service arm too, to relieve the pressure on our legal service system in Mississippi for civil matters, particularly things like evictions that lead to criminal activity. People lose their job, they get kicked out of their house, and then they're breaking in someplace. And so it's a holistic approach, and we will be coming to you, and it's in our budget request already that we're asking for the authority to do that in a permanent way. And with that, I would be happy to field any questions about anything related to public defense or the city of Jackson, including places to eat out and good neighborhoods.
All right, Andre, thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Degree? Always a good job, always well prepared. We do appreciate what you're doing. I'm the public defender for Tishomingo County, so I understand and I sympathize with a lot of the stuff. We have different issues up there, but they're all still the same. And one of the very things is that we do on the start of every term is we go over the jail docket and talk about those that have been over in jail more than a year to see what the problem is. And very often, as you've alluded to, and I think you were saying this in your testimony about the backlog and the creation of the backlog. Some of that, I understand COVID did a number on a lot of things. Some of that is stuff that has to do with the crime lab, with mental evaluations, evaluations and stuff such as that are out of the hands of law enforcement, out of the hands of lawyers and the courts. And that goes to the delay of some of these prosecutions. Your office, or the Hinds County Public Defender Office, I didn't catch it, I don't think, but they're able to begin representing these clients at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, they do. They pick the cases up. Actually, they usually have a presence at initial appearance, but they do the preliminary hearings, and then, and they still represent the person, but they just have not had the time to actually spend. If the person doesn't call them regularly to draw them down, the majority of their lawyers are in the trial, in the circuit court working. And
that's where I was going. Forgive me, because I do not deal with the county court. I don't have a county court in my county, and I only have one in my judicial district. Those preliminary hearings, are those dealt with at the county court level, or or a justice court, or how? At what point? Where are you going with those?
What the practice in Hinds County is, if it's a county case, if it happens outside of any municipality, they do usually around the rest of the state. They go to justice court.
Right.
In Hinds County, those go to a county court judge. They have one dedicated county court judge. Byram, Clinton, Utica, they will have their own preliminary hearings. And I think the Public Defender's Office does, they go at least to Clinton. I don't know if they go to other of these smaller municipalities. Jackson Municipal Court does, obviously, the majority of preliminary hearings. But so to get from Jackson Municipal Court to the county court for those, the cases are actually transferred, and this is something that started when I was in the Public Defender's Office in the 90s. They transfer usually violent crimes. They'll do the prelim in the county court. So I would say, they definitely need another county court judge. I don't know if the county's asking for that, because I know they have to pay for it, but
how many does Hinds County have now?
They have 3. One does the exclusively youth court, one does all the civil matters, one does the criminal matters, which is majority of their time is dealing with these felonies.
How many justice court judges does Hinds County have?
I assume 5, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, they have 5. But they don't touch the felony criminal cases.
They don't do preliminaries at all?
No.
But the city judges, and what about like the cities of Byram or Raymond, that they have the preliminaries in those cities?
They do have the prelims there. I can remember going to Edwards to do a preliminary hearing, and the entire city was in the room we were having the hearing in, I think. But yeah, they do, obviously far fewer people. They're also dealing with the misdemeanors in those cases, in those jurisdictions.
Right. Okay, any further questions for Andre? I don't see any. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
You're always welcome. Next, we're going to go to John Gomez of Downtown Jackson Partners. Mr. Gomez, if you would just go to the end of the table, and you are recognized to begin when you are ready.
Morning. I'd like to thank the House Judiciary B Committee for inviting me to speak today. My name is John Gomez. I'm the president of Downtown Jackson Partners. Downtown Jackson Partners oversees the 65-block Business Improvement District. The district was formed in 1996 by private property owners who saw the challenges downtowns were facing across the nation and decided to assess themselves a fee to improve the downtown district. These visionaries saw the need to supplement the city services of the city with additional security and maintenance programs and to promote downtown as a place to live, work, and play. Downtown has seen approximately $1 billion in development since 2000. Local and out-of-state developers have invested in downtown, most notably turning downtown into a residential neighborhood with around 400 residents. Public investment have been immense during that time frame, with state renovating, constructing new offices, and local city renovating their office buildings. DJP acts as a facilitator to bring groups together to better downtown. And I think we've heard from speakers earlier about the crime issue in the city. But in my 17 years at Downtown Jackson Partners, the perception of downtown did not meet the reality of downtown. Downtown has been one of the most safest places in the state up until recent years, where we've seen increases in our crime. And this past year, we've seen some violent incidences that we're just not accustomed to. So I'd like to thank the legislature, the speaker, the lieutenant governor, and governor for funding more Capitol Police officers during this past session, judges for Hinds County, and attorneys for Hinds District Attorney's Office and Public Defender's Office, because the people that invest in downtown, live downtown, they're watching what's happening, and they see these new developments increase public safety as a way to help make them feel better about their investments in downtown. I would like to say that we've appreciated the increased patrols, because that's what our investors, anybody that's in downtown, they want to see more boots on the streets. They want to see that presence. And because you hear all the information about the lack of officers, so anytime you see more police presence in downtown, it's been greatly appreciated. I know we've asked previous speakers about what they'd like to see. What I think a big issue for downtown is that we've touched on earlier in this meeting, is that Downtown Partners would like to help create a comprehensive plan for all these different agencies that have jurisdiction in the CCID and in downtown, to have that created. Because what we would hope for is, if there's someone in need and they contact law enforcement, we need a seamless transition or response to when they call and someone responds, because we, quite frankly, people don't really care who responds to them in their time of need, but they just need to know when we call 911 that someone's going to be there to respond quickly and effortlessly. And I think as we've seen more Capitol Police officers in downtown, I think one thing that I would ask everyone to just review, to look at, is, since Capitol Police is such a presence in downtown in the Capitol Complex Improvement District, if they could have some expansion of their authority to enforce local ordinances. I think, as we've touched on, a lot of these small issues that affect us greatly are just being able to keep people free of sidewalks, move people out of places where the local ordinance says if it's closed, they need to move along. So a lot of this has to do with the homelessness issues because, quite frankly, it has a negative effect on downtown. We've hired a homeless outreach worker for the last 2 years to go to the streets and assess the homeless population because we just felt that we had to do something to help with the homelessness issue. And we found that the homelessness population is a diverse group of people filled with individuals who have addiction issues, mental health issues that we've all noted earlier, and that we've gotten some good data on the homeless population now. And if I could ask this body for additional help, I would say, if anything, any additional funding to help with the mental health population would be greatly appreciated, because a lot of the care for these individuals, they just need a specialized care that they need a lot of round-the-clock assistance for. So a lot of our local organizations, they do a great job. Social service organizations like Stewpot Gateway providing meals and services, but a lot of the homeless population just needs a specialized care that even though these service providers are working as hard as they can, they're just not equipped to meet those needs. I do want to also thank the state for funding several projects for Jackson this past session. I know this goes beyond public safety, but making downtown a vibrant community, we need things like the Dyer Hall that provides a venue for concerts, symphony performances, Broadway plays, and next summer we're hosting the International Ballet Competition. It's we're one of 4 cities, Varna, Bulgaria, Moscow, and Tokyo. I know Tokyo's kind of odd to be in this list of places, but we're bringing in 100 dancers from around the world, 40,000 people to Mississippi to showcase Mississippi, and having a great venue like Dyer Hall it makes it just that much easier to showcase what Mississippi has to offer to the world. So we appreciate that. And again, kind of parting from I guess the focus of this, I do want to thank the state with helping us with our water crisis, because even though this is not public safety and infrastructure are 2 of our biggest concerns when we're trying to attract businesses and retain businesses, because they want reliability. They want to make sure that they have water that they can drink. If they're in an office tower, that their cooling system can work with the proper pressure, and their bathrooms will flush. The toilets will flush in the bathrooms. So these are the infrastructure is a major concern of ours, and solving this water crisis has been great for us. We really appreciate it. And those are my prepared comments. If you have any.
Thank you, John. We do appreciate you. You had touched on wanting to do a coordinated effort between all the different stakeholders, the Hinds County Sheriff, Jackson PD, Capitol Complex PD, or whatever the case may be. Has any of that happened about getting this plan, about a plan together between the private sector and these public entities, so to speak?
I think it has been discussed, and we'd be more than happy to help any way we can. But I think that's something that needs to be worked on and looked at. And I know we've talked about having a seamless 911 system, and I think that's part of it. Because, you have 3 different entities, Department of Public Safety, Hinds County Sheriff's, and Jackson Police Department, that have jurisdiction within CCID, and it's still relatively new. But I think having that plan in place needs to be needs to be done.
Well, I'll reckon any members have any questions? I don't see any. John, thank you for coming. We appreciate what you do for downtown Jackson and the state in general. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go now. I've been told that the chief of Jackson Police has showed up. Chief Davis, if you will, I'll recognize you. I'm going to keep the Chief Justice last. Judges always make me wait, Chief Justice, so I get an opportunity to make you wait. So I'll recognize Chief Davis. When you're ready, you're recognized.
Yes. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. The mayor is out, so he is unable to be here. But I want to just talk about crime. Crime is multi-fashion. We deal with a lot, and like other cities across, major cities across America, since the pandemic, we have seen a surge in violent crime all across America, not just Jackson, Mississippi. So when you're talking about crime, there's 3 C's to the criminal justice system: cops, court, and correction. Anytime a major city is faced with obstacles of not able to put people in jail, having to depend on the state crime lab for evidence to prosecute a case, it's again the bottleneck. And a lot of individuals that should be in jail are out on the streets. The community see it. Law enforcement see it. When law enforcement apprehends someone, catch them for a crime, and you have to wait to be prosecuted, and these individuals are still out on the street committing more crime. Say homicides. We have many cases where individuals should have been in jail. They're out on the streets committing crime. And when the justice system is disturbed or broken, what you start seeing across the streets is street justice. Before I came here, I was dealing with a homicide where a kid got a gun and shot another kid. In many of our homicides in the city of Jackson, it's interpersonal. Many of these homicides is very hard to predict or prevent because it's happening between 2 people who don't know how to resolve their issues without pulling out a gun. And they bold enough to do it. They're bold enough to do it. So that drives a lot of our numbers. But I can talk about some of the things that the Jackson Police Department is doing. Year to date, we have made over 4,000 arrests. So we are working. We have made 1,200 felony arrests and 2,850 misdemeanor arrests. Last couple of years, we have been plagued with not having a holding facility. And as a result, we had to fear release so many people. So when a community feels that there's no consequences because we don't have that holding facility, that becomes a problem for the community. That becomes a problem for officers because we need the necessary tools. Any major city, you need the necessary tools to enforce the law. And when you don't have that most vital tool, it's a holding facility. Now what you have It's individuals on the streets knowing that they can get away. And I meet with our community, I meet with our officers, and right now today we're working on, in the very near future, opening the Jackson detention holding facility so that we can put a clear-cut message out to these bad actors that if you commit a crime in Jackson, you will go to jail. And thank you for all the judges. Thank you for the attorneys. But what the city of Jackson needs, because all our evidence have to go to the state. The state collects the whole state evidence. So we had a capital city crime lab so that we can address the crimes in capital city that would help. So Capitol Police, Hinds County, and Jackson making the arrests. We're making these arrests. You can see the numbers. But if we cannot collect and analyze all the evidence here in Jackson, we're still, even though we have all these attorneys, we're still in the same situation, waiting on evidence. So what I see Jackson and Hinds County needing more right now to help expedite these cases with the evidence to go to trial, we need a capital city a capital city crime lab housed here for the Capitol Police and all our law enforcement agencies. And we have a great working relationship with our federal partners. But before all this evidence, before we go to trial, we need the evidence. So that's just one of my needs. And also, what I'm requesting, in 2019, I realized that we must tap into technology to best serve our community. And technology is a force multiplier because we're losing law enforcement officers all over the state, all over the country. People just don't inspire to be police. We can't give up. We must tap into the technology. And what we built from the ground up is a real-time command center. And what it is a force multiplier where we can put cameras in our hotspot area so that we can monitor these cameras 24 hours a day so we can best deploy our resources to these areas to prevent, hopefully with the blue light, to prevent crime. But we can have the evidence, the eyes inside of communities so that we can best use the manpower that we do have. And plus it's an investigation tool that we can use to prosecute these bad actors. And we must move towards technology. I hear from business owners, some of the schools in our communities. And when we put those cameras down in South Jackson, crime reduced by 51%. Left South Jackson, guess where it went? Towards north. The same bad actors left South Jackson because they know they was watched by police. We have made an arrest. We have seen shootings. So when we start making these arrests and publicizing, it moved towards the Bellhaven, towards the Fondren. We're working right now with Dr. Reed to try to put cameras in those areas. Last year, Representative Gibbs, and I met with many individuals here soliciting money so that we can put cameras across the city so we can best keep all of Jackson safe. Because people are walking away from this profession. But technology is the way to go right now. Yes, we need more money. We need to pay more police officers. We need to pay police officers more because it's a very difficult job. We see the good and the bad and the ugly of life. And it's very difficult to understand why a son would kill his mother, why two friends would get into a senseless argument and shoot each other down, why kids walking around with assault rifles shooting up our fairgrounds. It's a very difficult job, and all that stress is on the shoulders of police officers. So we must search for best practices. We must tap into technology. But I truly believe, and I like the direction that we're going right now. Everybody's at the table. Because if Hinds County is short, JPD is short, Capitol Police short. But if we all come together and work under one umbrella to keep the capital city safe, it's a force multiplier. The DA is prosecuting cases. We get a capital complex crime lab to prosecute cases. And these bad actors realize that if I commit a crime now in Jackson, I won't go home. And we must get our jail situation, because you get a community to realize the difference between Rankin County, Madison County, and Hinds County. Rankin County and Madison County has a jail, and the bad actors know it. And that's what we're working to get that Jackson detention facility open, so we can help fix this broken correction system here in our capital city. So I'm open for any questions, but
Chief,
yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Thank you for your heartfelt testimony and sincerity on some of the stuff you said. I want to talk about this holding facility or jail. When I practiced law in Jackson, there was a little place, I guess, kind of behind the courthouse. I know there was a lot of women there. Is that still in operation?
Behind the courthouse.
I thought there was one old Jackson. There was a little detention center back there.
No, it's burned. That building is burned. So what we are doing is the downtown Jackson facility in the court building. We're looking to, because it's vacant right now, and we're working with Hinds County Board of Supervisors to do some rehabbing. And we're meeting every other week to try to see where we at on getting that open, taking care of some necessary repairs. And we are looking to open that up so that we can house some of our misdemeanor offenders. Because right now in the city of Jackson, we have nowhere to take these misdemeanor offenders. And when a misdemeanor offender realizes that I'm not going to go to jail for taking something under $1,000 from a dollar store, we're in jeopardy of losing that business, losing that tax base. So that's why I'm so aggressively trying to get this facility open and put that message out. So we're talking every other week to try to make this happen, meeting.
Is that place, have you got that place designated or ready to go? You know where you're going with it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have identified, and we're working the Hinds County Board of Supervisors, the Mayor's Office, Council on board. So everybody's on board. We're just looking to fund it.
How much, for lack of a better word, beds, or how many will you be able to hold there?
Well, the whole facility right now, I believe, 180-something beds. So we want to start on, I believe, the third floor, which would give us maybe 50, 60 beds just to start. And it will be a pilot, but we must start. And so we identified a floor, making the necessary repairs. We have been approved to hire more detention officers, to staff it, to feed them, to transport them. So all the business of running a holding facility, we have put that in place. And we're looking now how it looked to fund that. And I believe that if we get that, and we can partner with capital or the state to help us fund that. That's that force multiplier. And I believe that some of these misdemeanor offenders that's terrorizing downtown partners, they will have somewhere to go.
When someone in the city of Jackson commits a felony at this point, do you take them to Raymond?
Yes.
Until they make bond, if they make bond, or whatever the case may be?
Correct.
Okay. You talked about these cameras. You said you put them in South Jackson?
Yes.
What was the process of that? I mean, was that something the city council did? Was that something the police department did? Or how was it funded? And just, if you will, tell me how that came about.
Well, it came about, if you can recall, late 2018. I think Ebbie just became chief around late 2018 and going into 2019. We had a active shooter scare inside the UMMC hospital, where they reported that they had an active shooter inside the hospital. So they have their own police department. So they called me right there in front of, which is their jurisdiction in State Street. An individual shot into a car and hit two babies. The mother got out of the car and ran into the emergency room with two bloody babies. So during that time, the hospital shut down. UMC shut down and said that they had an active shooter. I responded to the scene, and I was trying to locate because I had to deploy my SWAT team. So I'm responding to the scene, and I'm trying to get some surveillance to locate this active shooter inside the hospital. I knew they had cameras. So come to find out, it was not an active shooter inside the hospital. So I knew right then, and I had to answer all that. UMC didn't have the answer. No other law enforcement agency had to answer. I had to address the media about what we're going to do to keep UMC safe. So that's when I went into the pursuit of technology, so that if or when it ever happened again, we will be able to override and tap into the camera system at UMC, so that if there's a case of an active shooter, we can deploy the resources to save time and lives. So that's why I went into the real-time command center, and we built this from zero. So I got with my grant writer, and we was able to write a grant, a hotspot grant, and that is to put cameras in high crime area, which at that time was South Jackson. So we was awarded a grant. The mayor gave us a building. We renovated the building. The mayor gave us the money to outfit it with all the cameras so that we can tie into that hotspot area and we can monitor the area 24 hours a day. And the success it took on, crime reduced 51%. We knew that was the direction to go. And when crime reduced in Belhaven realized that crime increased. And some of the bad actors was down in South Jackson was arm robbing folks in Belhaven. We make the arrest, but bad thing about it, some of those individuals are still out. But due to their success, I realized that that is the way to go. That is a force multiplier, because we can't afford to put police officers on every corner, but we can put eyes and ears in the community so that we can keep our citizens safe.
When you say it dropped 51%, what time frame was that over?
It was about a year and a half. By the time that we put those cameras up and we was able to monitor and build the real-time command center, and we was able to deploy resources anytime that we saw suspicious activity. And
so JPD owns the cameras?
Yes, yes.
So you can use those in court as a custodian record. That's how you provide the evidence. Because
Yes.
Okay. So that was paid for by grant. I asked the sheriff, and the hot spots in the city at now, would you classify that as the Bellhaven area, Fondren area?
Well, it's crime just moving around so rapidly. It's kind of all over, and I want to put cameras all over. I want to partner with Capitol Complex to try to put cameras around the fairground. I want to put more cameras in West Jackson, North Jackson, the Fondren area, Bellhaven. I met with many of the neighborhood associations, and that is a number one request. They want cameras, and I believe that if we can continue to go in the direction that we go into working together. I met with Capitol Police and other agencies. They can have an officer there at our real-time command center monitoring the cameras within their jurisdiction, so that they can, if they don't have a communication dispatch, they don't have, if they're not up and running, at least they can have a officer with a radio watching the cameras inside their complex, where they can deploy those resources that officer there to possible threats. And I have offered that to Chief Luckett, so it's available in our communication center. If you want to bring a dispatcher to our communication center, I told the commission we're open for it. We have a seat at the table if they want to use it.
Any questions, lady from Madison?
Thank you so much, Chief, for being here, and thank you for the job that you're doing. I know it's a tough one, and I appreciate it. I represent the city of Madison here at the State House, and we have cameras there, and I believe that it is a huge deterrent of crime. And so I hope that your mayor and board of aldermen or councilmen will see that that's an important issue for the city of Jackson as well. But I wanted to elaborate or ask you a question that Andre had mentioned. If his kingdom, he wanted more data. I thought he was going to say he didn't need more money, but by the end of his speech, he said he did need more money. But I wanted to go back to the data and the why. I just wanted to know why the city of Jackson does not report their data to the FBI.
Well, it's on our website. We have a new system that we went to, the Tyler system. And with that new system, it's still a work in progress. So instead of reporting inaccurate numbers because the number fluctuate, we build in a system. So when we make all the necessary corrections, we will report those numbers to the FBI.
When do you see that date?
We working on that whole brand new system. We're working on that, so hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months, we can be able to have all the necessary repairs done to report the correct numbers.
Good. I know that he's thankful for that.
Yes.
Lady from Hinds.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
With respect to the holding facility, you mentioned that there are active discussions going on between JPD and City Council and the Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
Has the Board of Supervisors or the city committed actual dollars towards making this happen, or is it just being discussed?
Well, of course, the city is definitely committed dollars, manpower, resources, but the infrastructure of the building, we definitely need money for that. When I say infrastructure, whether the plumbing, the sales, things of that nature. But as far as we are fully committed, because we're committed the budget, the manpower, the resources that it take to run that facility.
let me re-ask the question. I'm not referring specifically to JPD running the facility once it's renovated. I mean specifically, has the city council voted to pledge or give any funds towards renovating the facility so that it can be opened?
I'm not sure on that dollar amount. I don't know if we have not, I'm not sure. I know we had many conversations. I don't know if any money has been allocated to that, but there are in ingredients to do what they need to do so that we can open it. The Board of Supervisors, the building maintenance, some small issues that we're trying to work out as it relates to the needs to house human beings. Some of the problems that the Department of Justice had with that facility. So we're trying to make sure, working together with the Board of Supervisors and the City Council to prepare all those necessary needs. If that answers your question.
Those needs, though, to get the building up to code, so to speak, to satisfy DOJ's issues, that just takes money, right?
Yes, it takes me.
And neither the City Council nor the Board of Supervisors have given you money?
No, I have not. No one has given me money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. But we need money, so if we can get the money to get that, I think we will see a big difference in our crime in summer, especially send a message to our bad actors.
Lady from Hinds, Ms. Gibbs.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for being here.
Yes.
You didn't mention the number of police officers you have currently.
Yes, we currently have 250, and we budget for 304. And I appreciate the city, the mayor, and the city council. We was able to give a pay increase, a raise for officers this year because we was losing officers in record numbers. In record numbers because of the pay. And we need more money because this is a very stressful job. And I believe that we must put public safety above a lot, because if people don't feel safe, it's bad for any city. And the number one issue right now is officers need to get paid.
Well, another key point you mentioned was the state crime lab.
Yes.
So do you know the duration of time from the state crime lab being able to process evidence so that a trial can commence?
I don't know the exact time, but just like the DA mentioned, they're playing catch up right now. I think it was like 18 months, and due to COVID right now, it's even longer right now. They're prosecuting old cases. So I don't know that time, but I believe that we can speed it up, the evidence, if we had a capital city crime lab.
Well, is the issue dealing with staff at the state crime lab? Is that what the delay is?
Well, I can't speak for the state crime lab, but I know we just one customer the state crime lab cater to. They get evidence from all over the state. So I can imagine with COVID, from departments from all over the state, I can imagine all the evidence they have to process so that a case can go to trial all over the state. So with the workload and the population here in Hinds County, I believe that is one of the things will help the judges, help the attorneys, help law enforcement if we had a state capital city crime lab.
And you mentioned the need for cameras, where we did request funding to have additional cameras, and you also mentioned the fact that you had offered to Capitol Police to have a staff there to be able to to be able to look at the cameras to be able
Yes.
to access it. So I think that's a good idea, as we talked about being able to, on live time, be able to see any crime that might be occurring in the Capitol Complex District. So
Yes.
you're going to wait on the Capitol Police to determine whether or not they want to have that access. You've offered that.
Yes, I've offered that many times, just like Mr. Gomez said. You don't care who respond, someone will have to respond. And I believe that if you are running the department, you must communicate. People need to have someone, because I think Capitol Complex maybe have 21 square miles of patrol. We have 115 square miles, and we're short also. And I believe we receive over 900,000 calls a year. That's a lot of calls. That's a lot of calls, and we average about 8,000 calls a week. So I believe if we continue to work together and come together and strategize together and to provide the best police services for Jackson, all of Jackson. I'm concerned about all of Jackson, and also the Capitol Complex. But if we work together, it's a force multiplier, and we can make a difference.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Chief, a recurring theme. I spoke to the Police Chief Association down in Biloxi, back in June or July, and a recurring theme among all police chiefs was a couple of things. One of it was pay, one of it was mental health issues, and one of it was recruitment. You've been doing this a number of years. I know pay is an incentive to get people there, but I don't know if that's enough to get people to be officers. What, in your view, can be out there to create a better environment to recruit new officers?
Well,
I mean, it's a chicken versus the egg type of thing. You lower crime, you get better officers. You get better officers, you lower crime. And I know there's not a end-all, be-all. It's kind of eating an elephant, but just any idea that you may have.
Well, officers come to work. And you have to be a special individual to sign up to deal with the good and the bad and the ugly of life. But I think the best award that a police officer can get is knowing that the justice system will work. Knowing that a police officer have the resources. If I catch an individual, I got an award. Now the courts and the corrections going to do their part. I believe that an officer will want to stay because it's a calling that they're making a difference for a community. And when an officer see that, and I have had some young officers to approach me, very frustrated about a individual terrorizing a local store. The store owners in their community depending on that officer to make a difference, to be their superhero. It's a self-satisfaction when the justice system works and the law enforcement can see the justice system work. I believe that'll be the big recruiting tool, of course, money. And we have did a great job with providing them with body cameras to be able to tell their story in case something happened. Tasers, laptops, new patrol SUVs. We have did a great job of giving them, but that's not enough. But what I'm hearing from officers to retain officers, to take that stress off officers, to know that the justice system will work. Because these officers have to patrol a particular beat. And these officers, these citizens on this beat, believe that these officers will make them safe. The officers want to make them safe. But when they see the same individuals, it's not everybody. It's bad actors that know they can get away with it, terrorizing the community, and they're still on the streets. Is difficult. And another thing is mental health. It's a very, very sad and it's a dark situation. People can't take care of themselves. Mental health is on the rise. And what do we do with them? We have no way, because they're human beings, we have no way to police mental illness, homeless population. It's not illegal to be homeless. It's not illegal to be mentally ill. But we are faced with those individuals each and every day, all day. For a community, for downtown to thrive, Mr. Gomez, I've dealt with it many times. It's a lot of mental illness. Business leaving due to mental illness, homeless population. That is a very stressful situation that if we can bring some attention to that, because that's a human need that you cannot police, and it's very delicate. And that puts stress on an officer. And that if we can clean that up, put some attention on that, I believe that will help an officer stay on the job a little longer.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members? I don't see any. Chief, we appreciate you coming. Thank you for your hard work. This committee stands ready to help you in any way, shape, or form, okay?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Chief Justice, you're up to bat. It's close to lunch. Chief Justice. And Chief Justice, just for the record, before we got started today, we took a poll. Did we want Greg Snowden to talk, or did we want you to talk? And we all voted for you, so.
I would have voted with you all as well. Sitting here and looking at a group of people near the size of a jury reminds me of a trial I was in West Virginia years ago. And when I got up to speak to the jury, what I said is, I am the person that y'all been waiting to hear from all day long. Not because of who I am, but because I'm last. So I do want to, I've got some handouts coming around. Catherine, if you'll get those out. It's really unique to me that the sheriff opened up talking about mental health today. And then the next thing I heard is, Mr. Chairman, you talked about mental health, and then the chief talked about mental health. So one thing I wanted to bring out, and I brought these along, is showing you, number one, I believe that the courts of Mississippi is the most efficient part of government, bar none. And I'll support that with what I'm going to show you today. So when you give money to the courts, it's wisely spent. If it's not spent, it's returned. And but the reason I bring up mental health is one of the things is because of the chairman, along with Representative Creekmore, last year stood tall and helped the courts increase funding for mental health. And I'm pleased to report, I don't know that's been reported publicly, but Hinds County will have its own mental health court judge. Faye Peterson has agreed to do that. And so I thought that'd be good news for y'all to understand that, yes, the court's thinking about it, dealing with it, training people, and going to expand it. The document you have before you is the amount of savings that intervention courts in this state have saved the state of Mississippi. It's $1 billion. Those are not, all these numbers are easy to back up. And most important to people like the sheriff and the chief of police is recidivism rate. The people who graduate from these courts, the recidivism rate is 3.2%. 3%. Recidivism rate for people who go to Parchment is 35%. You can't spend better money than you do. You'll see on that report a breakdown. The number of mothers that have drug-free babies is amazing, and how much money that costs the state if it doesn't work. So the court is into a lot more things. Now, I know today's topic's about crime. That's the reason I gave you that. You can take it home and read it. You can call me and want to talk about it, but we're mighty proud of what we're doing, and it certainly ties in with one of the problems with the crime rate, both in this city as well as throughout the state. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit and say this. If we want to figure out where we're heading, we've got to examine where we've been. And so some of the things and questions that I heard answered today, I'm going to try to fill in the blanks for you. The monies that have been given to the court at this point, both through the CARES Act originally and now through ARPA, our rescue plan, those monies are designated, and the federal government has locked in those expenditures have to be COVID related. Okay? So if it's not COVID related, those monies are not available. That's not to say that we're not taking care of other matters that are not COVID related. I practice law, I've tried cases in 14 different states in federal and state court. Even tried to try a case up here in Jackson before I went on the Supreme Court almost 20 years ago, and I couldn't get a trial. So that's not a new thing. That's not new. However, the efforts that we're making now, one of the questions I heard is how old are some of these cases that we're assigning judges? And I wrote down here on the 200 cases. So right now, I have appointed judges, and I have a whole nother list of more judges to appoint, should I need more, because we're now just figuring out what are we doing. We've had a lot of contacts with the court, and they want to know, well, who you appoint and when's it going to start? Well, it started way back when, and it goes back to the CARES Act just for 1 second. And the reason I want to bring that out is that the history of COVID, from our standpoint and government standpoint, was about March 2020. That's when everybody found out something's going on. And at that time, one of the first calls that I got was from Meridian, Mississippi, and they said, Judge, the people are leaving the courthouse, the employees are going home, the clerks. That's where they can't. The courts have to stay open. The courts have to stay open. And I talked to the governor's office about the stay-at-home order they put in, and I said the judiciary is different. Constitutionally, we're a branch of government, and we control when we're open, when we're closed. And we got to be open all the time, because crime don't take no time off. And by the time a meth lab blows up in the middle of the night, some judge has got to be available to decide where those young children are going to go to. And when there's a domestic violence in the middle of the night, some spouse needs a protective order signed by a judge. So we had to stay open. And I'm very proud of the judges throughout the state. And just like when we're starting the project we're on now, which I'll get to in a minute, which is the Rescue Act funds, we started studying the problem first. Jody Owens contacted me, the Lieutenant Governor contacted me, the Speaker contacted me, and the first thing we did is I met with Sally Norwood and Jody and Jen McBride said, okay, what's going on? and they pointed out the problems in trying to get their cases to trial. Well, in the meantime, I was reading in the newspapers or over the internet or whatever that the problem was the judges. You know, the judges in Hinds County were the problem. And while all this was going on, nobody was talking to the judges because they kept saying, when's somebody going to talk to us? Well, I didn't have anything to say till I knew what the plan was going to be. But we started having meetings, and one of the first people invited to the meetings when I met with the judge was Andre. Because we said, okay, if we're going to beef up the prosecution, you got to beef up the criminal defense. And so those meetings started transpiring. I asked the district attorney, I said, when do you expect you can start trying additional cases? When I start appointing judges. He said July 1st, and I thought, I don't think so. I've been trying cases a long time. The money didn't start flowing until July 1st. Couldn't pay anybody. I called Andre. He said, I can't meet with you right now. I've got another thing going on. But he and I had a nice long conversation as I was commuting back and forth. And he thought that maybe we could get cases started by September 1st, if I recall right. And I thought, well, that's more realistic. You've got to get these people hired and the staffs. People need to know what the cases are. So once we started working with the fall as our goal to start cases, you know, the press wanted a magic bullet. You know, you got this money, the legislature say you can appoint judges. Where are they at? Who are they? Well, it wasn't to do that. It wasn't time to rush into it because we had to get brick and mortar in place. We had to have places to hold trials. So I'm meeting with the judges. I'm meeting with the defenders, both local and state. Gail met with us as well. And we started working toward a plan and identifying cases that would be ready for trial. I mentioned I'd give you those dates. Those dates of the cases, some of the cases have been assigned, go back as far as 2008, 2011, 2010, 2014. Now, recognizing that I've got to keep separation from the inner workings of a trial because the Constitution requires me. All I'm trying to do is facilitate and make sure that everybody understands what the issues are. I was hearing from one side, we can't get trials, and the judge was saying, we got criminal dockets here. We hold criminal docket every month. I said, the problem is they're not ready for trial. Well, we're hearing today one of the reasons not ready for trial is because they have to wait for information to come from expert witnesses, state crime labs, and things like that. So that was one of the dams that was causing this thing to get backed up. When going back to CARES Act, I first realized that statewide we were opening about 120,000 cases a year. And I realized when COVID first hit, it was basically keep the court only open for absolute critical things that had to be open. Hinds County was one of the hardest counties hit by COVID. And so everything slowed down but did not stop. But I computed that we'd have a backlog of about 35,000 cases. I was thinking when it first started, this thing's going to last 3 months, it's going to be over. But it didn't work out that way. But knowing that I had 35,000 cases, at that time when the federal government said, we'll give some money to the states to try to work, at that time, if you all recall, at first the governor was going to spend the money. And then the legislature said, well, not so fast, Governor, we're going to spend the money. So I'd already sent a letter to the governor, then I sent a letter to the Senate and asked for $5 million. And the legislature was kind enough to give me $2.5 million. And that is one thing I want to talk about. Any future funding, please involve us through Representative Snowden. He's a representative when he's over here. He's a director over there. to work together to design the bill. Because one of the problems, once we started spending money, I get a call from the lieutenant governor and said the DA needs some assistance. And the next thing I got was a letter from Andre saying, if you're going to give them assistance, give us some too. And I said, well, that's only fair. However, the bill that was sent over by the House that gave us that initial $2.5 million in spending money restricted us to spending money on judges only. And so that's all we're going to do. We're going to follow what the law is. In the meantime, I met with the governor and said, look, you didn't put any restrictions on the $2.5 million that you gave the court to deal with this. And if you don't mind, the district attorney and the public defenders would like to have some money so they can beef up their staffs. And he said, fine, go ahead and do that. And so that's what was done. When everything was said and done, we returned, because of the way the legislation was coming out of here and the cutoff dates when the money had to be spent by, of the $2.5 million that the legislature gave the courts to work on these projects, we returned $864,000 back to the legislature. And that's the way anything that you all direct toward the courts will be spent on what it's directed for, and what is not spent will come right back over here. We don't go buy a new car or something like that. Matter of fact, we don't own any cars over there. I think they have one van to deliver for drug things. But the bottom line is it's wisely spent, it's returned, we can document everything. So that's how we get then coming up with ARPA, the Rescue Act, and then started coming. The request started coming, and we started working on it. But there was no reason for me, I was getting telephone calls now from senators and representatives, when you go and appoint judges. Well, I'd already talked to Isidore Patrick. Isidore, will you be a judge for me? Yes. I'd already talked to Kenneth Thomas up in the Delta. Would you be a judge for me? I'd already talked to Betty Saunders and asked, would you be a judge for me? But before I talked to anybody, the first thing I did is identified about 12 judges, and I then had our legal department, I said, I want to know what these people's records are on appeal. I want to know if these judges get reversed all the time, because I don't want to bring judges in that are going to have bad trials. And so after vetting the judges, now, as it turned out, the first appointment group was 4, but that's not who I was looking at. Unfortunately, Isidore Patrick's wife's caregiver's mother had some kind of incident. He had to start taking care of his wife. He had to back out. 3 or 4 days ago, I got a letter from Kenneth Thomas that said, I'm 80 years old. This is after he called me and said, I'm on, I'm off, I'm on. I didn't realize his wife was a county judge. She had said, you need to get down there and help him out in Hinds County. And but finally, the decision was made that he wouldn't come down. So anyhow, the judges are selected that way. I still have another cadre of judges to appoint. So what we're starting with is getting 4 courtrooms ready, and they're almost ready. I get daily reports, what Greg does, and he forwards them to me, about the status of having the courtrooms ready. And so public defenders and the DA's office and administrative office of courts are physically looking. Also, they're talking to the Hinds County Board of Supervisors, who I think also was either $500,000 or $700,000 that they put into the project to have courtrooms ready as well. So you've got all branches of government working together to try to get rid of the backlog. And the backlog's real. The numbers are going up. And I went through, see if I can find some notes here. Well, I'm glad I found this one. We knew the backlog was continuing. And in November of 21, Greg Snowden sent a letter to, I think it went to every member over here. And basically what it said is out of the rescue money that the courts asked for the following money. We asked for $10 million to continue working on the case backlog. The reason we asked for that, the original money we had, the $5 million, we had closed about 8,000 cases, but we still had another 24,000 to go. So that's the reason we asked for that money. The amount of money that was passed last year in the bill was $1.7 million. So if you want to get the job done, it's not going to get done for 1.7. We already spent $5 million getting rid of 8,000 cases in backlog. So the whole key to it, and that's the reason I said you got to know where we've been. These are hard numbers. We know what they are. And I got to be careful about what I say here, but I really thought in my mind this, that if you give us the amount of money we asked for, you give me 2 years and you won't have a backlog, or Mike will take it to the house. It's just that simple, but I've got to have the money to get it done. And the ability of the public defenders and the DA's office working together with the judges. We have a good number of good judges throughout the state that can come in and help us. But we will be trying twice the number of cases, just for starters. And what I did find out is that we appointed judges for 200 cases. Right? So that's our test. 4 judges, 50 cases, you get your own docket, you got your own courtroom, you got your own court administrator, you got your own bailiff. The sheriff has already said, I'll provide the bailiffs. They'll be there. So thank you for that. And so working together, we can get rid of this backlog. And the backlog will help you get rid of the crime, because you already are hearing what's happening is that the people that are being arrested are not afraid because they're not going anywhere. They ain't going to go nowhere. I'm reminded of the time when Katrina hit. When Katrina hit, I've got still the vision of it, because people were looting the streets of Hattiesburg where I live. And finally, the sheriff said, we're going to do something about it. They put up a chain link fence out there and said, if you violate the curfew, you get to spend some time inside the chain link fence. And that's what they did. They got 2 bottles of water and a chain link fence, a terrific view. And you know what? It solved the issue because it was prompt. It was justice, it was immediate. And at the same time, I was watching the people in New Orleans struggling because police officers were not showing up for work. The politicians had nobody to govern. The whole thing fell apart. And you can't let that happen here or anyplace else. These crime statistics statewide are up all over the state. I've got numbers from the coast to Memphis. And I can show you that they're up. The severity of crime, though, is really high here. And so what we did as we worked together, working with the Public Defender's Office, working with the DA's office, and say, give us serious crimes. We don't want any death penalty cases. And the reason we didn't want death penalty cases, because you had to bring in such large amounts of jurors. But as far as capital cases, yes. Give me 50 of your worst crimes. Give me your high-profile felonies. So that's the cases that are going to be tried. And whether it gets started next week, the week after that, I'm not sure.
I want to ask on that, I want to interrupt you just quickly because I forget.
Well,
Are any of these judges, are they just doing criminal or are they doing civil work too?
We're doing, the criminal cases are Rescue Act cases. I have, one of the judges, one of the local judges said, I got a 7-week trial, civil case. And I said, well, we're going to alleviate that. So what's going to happen is, and I appointed a judge to hear that case, and I'm being told that's working out well, going to trial in January. So what we're trying to do is to free up the judges here to try cases as well as the ones we're bringing in, so we can double up the effort. But civil cases will be tried. They're not going to be ignored. Criminal cases get priority on the docket.
But these four judges can hear civil cases?
Pardon?
The four judges?
The four judges,
they're just criminal?
They're being assigned criminal case numbers only. Mm-hmm. Well, let me quit talking. I'll start answering questions. I'm sure there are some, so.
You talked about money. How much are you talking about to alleviate, do you think, to alleviate the backlog, or at least to get it manageable?
We've got to eliminate it. That's the goal. It's not get manageable, because you manage anything. And that's the way things have been, man. I want to clean out that docket. That's one of my goals. I've got certain goals while I'm chief. One of them is to get rid of all the backlog. The other goal I have for y'all that might have an interest is working with CPS. We're going to try to do 1,000 adoptions this next year. And y'all were kind enough to give us money to do that too. So that's another goal I'm working on. So we're expanding. I mentioned drug courts when I started. Actually, there's going to be 5 drug courts. Not drug courts, I'm sorry. But regular mental health courts, there's going to be 5. Those are pilot programs that we're going to try to do the best we can to eliminate that issue, which is part of the crime issue. But sure, when the sheriff has to pick up, he's going to have people down there that they pick up once every 4 days. The problem, most of the problems in the mental health court is caused by people failing to take their medications. Okay? Failure to take medication is the leading problem. And I've had to fight with, and fortunately your chairman backed me up when other legislators said, well, just combine them all. You can throw drug courts and mental health courts and veterans courts all together. Well, no, you can't. I'm a Vietnam veteran. It's different. Just veterans got special problems. Now think about it. In a drug intervention court, you got 30 or 40 people. It is Winston Kidd has that here, and you say, if y'all not drinking, you're not taking your drugs, you're going to work there. So he goes to the litany, and then what was being suggested, we bring those mental health people in and say, oh, by the way, are you on your drugs? Are you taking your drugs? You can't have those people in the same room. They got different problems. It requires different administration. And so we've got that straightened out, and that's going to work very well. I'm comfortable that at least we can get some progress in that area.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
I have one clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Chief, good to see you here. You mentioned 35,000 cases.
That was a projected number based on the number of filings and then looking at it. And pretty much it's been proven out that's about the right number.
So your objective is to eliminate the backlog as far as criminal cases are concerned?
Well, the money that we have provided by the federal government has to be COVID related, okay? Now, some of that's trickled down because if you can't free a judge up to get rid of normal backlog, they can't get those cases. But we do have a defined area to make sure that we're not encumbering, one of the things we did, let me explain to you what we do when we do spending the money. When the CARES Act came, the first thing I asked for was a meeting with the state auditor. and asked him to come to the court and meet with us, our staff. And that brought another auditor because there had to be an outside auditor. And we were able to get them to approve any expenditures that the court was making in real time, so that we never had to worry about a callback, well, you shouldn't have spent that on this. So we have to, with rescue funds, we've got to stay within the confines of COVID-related. But let me say this. Outside of that, through the appointment of special judges and knowing what the problem in Hinds County was, I also appointed James Bell and a couple other people worked over there with the county court system. They closed off of the dockets 120,000 cases last year. 120,000, and that wasn't. We weren't spending rescue money on that. We used money that y'all allot to us for special judge appointments. And if I see a problem, then we're going to try to identify it and get people in there. But over 100,000 cases were closed.
So your estimate is that using 4 special judges, it may take us about 2 years to clear the COVID-related cases.
Oh, no, those are two different things. Okay? The Rescue Act allows expenditures, and y'all correct me over if I'm wrong, but I think through 2024. Is that right? So that, my plan on that as far as the crime and getting these criminal dockets, we're going to keep going. Now, this is just not a one-shot deal. All this is the start. And I think that maybe that's what Andre and Jody were trying to say. Look, this is not going to be over tomorrow or next week or anything like that. It's going to take a while. But if it works according to plan, one of the things that happens for y'all non-lawyers type is once you start trying case, you start getting pleas. And then people start playing out. What is important to the local people here is getting them out of underneath the sheriff. Until they're convicted, they belong to Hinds County. If they're convicted, then they're in Parchment. That's a state issue. And if they're acquitted, then they go home. And see, that's one of the other things that we saw happening in the month. There was a period of time where I looked at about a 5-month period, if I recall right, about how many cases were getting tried. Out of a number of cases that were tried, there was a real high rate of acquittals. Now, for y'all not lawyers, that means 12 people said not guilty. That don't mean we can't decide. It means not guilty. Go home. And so out of 25 cases, well, a couple things are happening there. Either the defense did a great job, the guy was innocent, or somebody broke down on the side, or maybe shouldn't have been indicted to start with, because that's what the judges here in this community were complaining to me about was all you read about is the convictions. You're not reading them. You don't see it in the newspapers about the dismissals. Otherwise, the case gets ready to come up to trial. The guy's been sitting in jail 600 days, and the sheriff can back it up. All of a sudden, it's a null process, and he gets to go home. And he sat there for 2 years and never was tried. And that's the stuff that is coming to a halt. I mean, seeing these things has made me realize from the standpoint of, from the justice side, forget about the administrative aspect. That's where I'm trying to get AOC to take care of the administrative thing, because some of these people we're sitting here talking about are going to appear in my court one day, and I don't want to say I favor or disfavor any of them. We'll look at the law. If the law was followed and they were convicted, they stay convicted. If not, they get reversed and get another trial. So, but I don't have any knowledge of any singular case or anything like that. But I do know, or I've been assured by the judges, that the 50 cases that were going to each of these first 4 judges are serious felony cases. Are you finding that to be true, Andre? They are? Yeah, okay. So that was real important to me. There's one thing for DA, say we got this number of cases ready, but if they haven't done their discovery and all these things that go on in a case, and the reason I didn't appoint judges immediately is because if I appoint them and they showed up and say, okay, we've called case 001, what have you to say? We need a continuance. I didn't want that. I didn't want the city to be encumbered and the state encumbered with a bunch of that. What we're trying to do is get cases ready, and so when the bell rings, everybody's ready to go, and we're going to have some trials. And we are going to continue those trials as long as the money lasts, okay?
Mr. Chief Justice, are there any questions for, I don't see any. We always welcome you to the committee. We appreciate what you do across the street. You are doing yeoman's work, and you are really going to get a special star in your crown dealing with Greg Snowden every day.
Well, right now, it just feels like a sharp point.
I understand. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the hearing. I am going to, adjourn it until November the 17th, and we'll get the mayor, a subpoena will be issued for his attendance here on that date to tell us what his plan for the city of Jackson and the crime is. So until November 17th, we are adjourned.